Chapter 1561. The ruins of immortality. Tianyuan Province was located in the south of the Zhongyuan Province. It was located slightly further away from the core and was very prosperous. Danzhou was the capital of the province. It had a population of tens of millions, and cultivators and mortals lived together. The thick city walls were more than 300 meters tall and extremely steep. They were densely covered with sword marks and arrow holes. They were ancient, and there were even claw marks left behind by demonic beasts in ancient times. It was like a living history book, narrating the endless history. On the city walls there were many guards. All of them were at the foundation establishment stage, and their leaders were at the golden core stage. The mayor was even a peak nascent soul stage powerhouse. In the city the buildings were tall, just like a modern city. Mortals rode on dragon horses while cultivators rode on swords and flew in the air. It was very prosperous. There were at least dozens of quasi-god level formations hidden. Vast magic power locked down the sky, as if holding up the 9 heavens and reaching down to the yellow springs. The power of the formations and restrictions was constantly circulating. It was as heavy as a boulder and indestructible. Even if a soul formation stage powerhouse attacked, it would take dozens of full-powered attacks to break it. The formations of the Black Rock City in the Yingzhou world that defended the ancient demon abyss, and the Winterfell in the Northern Ocean world that was said to be indestructible, were like clay sculptures compared to the guardian formation of this city. In the wilderness, apes and tigers roared. Savage beasts appeared and ferocious birds screeched in the sky, stirring up layers of clouds for hundreds of miles. Mountain ridges lay like old dragons and ancient trees were wild. In the Devil Corpse mountain range 1,500 kilometers away from the city, miasma filled the air. Trees grew everywhere, covering the sky and the sun. It seemed that an ancient demon had fallen here, leaving behind a lot of demonic chi. It caused many demonic beasts and plants to mutate, eating and hurting people. It was very terrifying. As a result, there were very few people here. Even the guards of Danzhou were not willing to set foot here easily. It was considered a quasi-forbidden area. In a forest filled with black fog, there were strong spatial fluctuations. Roar. 2 Foundation establishment winged tigers that were hunting nearby were alarmed. They lowered their bodies and growled softly. Their claws pressed against the ground, revealing their bone hooks. Their eyes were full of vigilance and excitement. Suddenly, a ray of light flashed and turned into an ancient stone door. The light and auspicious colors dimmed. More than a dozen large men with ugly faces, savage auras or ghostly auras walked out of the door. In the middle there was a handsome black-clothed man in the lead, followed by 2 women. One of them wore soft armor, looking valiant and full of fighting spirit. The other was beautiful like a pearl emitting clouds. It was none other than Zhang Tian. The 2 winged tigers were immediately suppressed by everyone's violent aura. They trembled and crawled on the ground like little kittens. After Zhang Tian waved his hand, the winged tiger seemed as if it had been granted amnesty. It stood up on its hind legs and bowed 3 times before flapping its wings and leaving this place. In this city there is a house for sword servants, the Imperial Sword Villa. According to the information he received, he was cultivating in seclusion here. Let's act according to the plan and execute the execution. If there are any changes, act accordingly. Zhang Tian calmly looked at Danzhou City in the distance. His eyes were cold and an intense killing intent was slowly released. Yes. Heavenly Emperor. Many soul formation stage bandits bowed and cupped their fists. They concealed their energy and moved stealthily, disappearing on the spot instantly. Sword Servant, you teamed up with 2 semi-god realm warriors to kill me. I've said that I'll take revenge. The execution will start with you. Zhang Tian laughed and said, with your hot blood, sacrifice the flag for the rise of the heavenly court. I hope you're ready. The Imperial Sword Villa. Located in the north of Danzhou City on the 3,000 meters tall Wenjian Peak, it covered an area of thousands of acres. The palaces were continuous and magnificent. They were shrouded in cloud-like spiritual chi and were faintly discernible. Treasure light and auspicious colors flickered as if the palace of an immortal had fallen to the mortal world. A 100 meters long waterfall fell into the back garden, forming a natural deep pool below. This was a blessed land that contained a medium-sized spiritual vein. Spiritual chi was constantly gushing out. With this, A heavenly sect or a heavenly lord family could be built and 10 foundation establishment stage cultivators could be nurtured. Nevertheless, all of this belonged to the sword servant alone. It was a gift from the ruins emperor's palace. In Danzhou City and even in Tianyuan province, it was supreme. Even the governor could not fly here and had to kowtow on foot. After the sword servant returned to the ruins of immortality, he was not punished by the sword god. Although he did not kill Jiang Tian, he had severely injured him and brought back a large amount of information. His merits offset his faults. In the continuous battle with Jiang Tian and Yi Gongming in the Penglai world, he was also quite injured. Therefore he was even given medicinal pills by the emperor. During this period he had been in closed-door cultivation to heal his injuries. The healing medicinal pills of the ruins emperor's palace were excellent. His injured divine treasures had recovered, and his cultivation had also returned to its peak state. At this moment, the sword servant was under the waterfall in the back garden. In the pavilion above the flat pool, he was discussing the path with a group of family members and disciples. The winding path led to a secluded place. On both sides, there were man-made medicinal fields that were set up with spirit-gathering formations. Inside, the 9 bens heavenly ginseng was like an arm, and lingji mushrooms hung high on ancient branches. Among the branches there were also many unknown herbs. They contained specks of brilliance, and the medicinal fragrance was elegant and refreshing. The sword servant sat in the middle and sipped his tea. His fingers tapped on his lap to the beat. Beside him, a beautiful concubine was playing the zither. She was dressed in thin clothes, and her graceful figure was faintly discernible. He came from a sect that was good at music. She was very beautiful, and her zither music cleansed the mortal world. Beside her, there were 7 or 8 disciples whose cultivation had reached the foundation establishment realm. They all held important positions in various parts of the ruins of immortality. Now they had been summoned by him to celebrate his birthday. The disciples clearly remembered that the sword servant's birthday was still a month away. They did not know why it had been brought forward. However, the sword servant's status was extremely high. These foundation establishment cultivators rarely saw him, so they were naturally flattered and came in droves. At this moment, a purple-clothed girl walked in slowly and bowed. "Ancestor. Qing'o, is the distinguished guest from the Demon Flame sect not here yet? Don't tell me you're busy and can't come?" The sword servant leaned on a stone chair and said slowly. His voice was not loud, but it was full of majesty. After all, he was the sword god's servant and had an extremely high status. In this place he was comparable to a king or a governor. "Ancestor, senior son of the Demon Flame sect asked me to send a message to Qing. This time he and sect master Mo will definitely come personally to celebrate the birthday. They have already set off and are expected to arrive in a day or two at full speed." The purple-clothed girl was born with bright eyes and white teeth. Her skin was like jade and she was beautiful and cute. She was tall and curvy. When she heard the ancestor's question, she did not dare to be negligent and quickly bowed. "Good. Very good." The sword servant heaved a sigh of relief and nodded gently, revealing a look of admiration. This was his great-great-granddaughter. Not only was she beautiful, but she was also quite talented. She was clearly only in her teens, but she had already reached the foundation establishment realm. Based on her strength, she was qualified to be listed on the Ruins of Immortality War God list. However, she was a cultivator from the upper world, so she could not be listed. The princes of the Ruins Emperor's palace all favored her. It would not be a problem for her to become a prince's wife in the future. That's right. Grand Elder Son of the Demon Flame sect only held a high position because of Master's guidance. He has developed well over the years with the support of the Sword Villa. The ancestor has shown great kindness to him. How could they not come? A young disciple under the sword servant said softly. He was dressed in a brocade robe and had a jade-like complexion. The sword servant's real name was Tong Yujian. He revealed a solemn expression and said, "This is a 1,000-year birthday celebration. We must strengthen our defenses. Don't be afraid of wasting crystals and spirit stones. All protective arrays and restrictions are to be activated day and night. Do not stop." The sword servant's eyes twitched as he ordered coldly. In addition, strengthen the sentries and patrols of the villa by 3 times. Set up hidden sentries within 5 kilometers of the Sword Seek Peak, especially those cultivators with unknown identities. Keep a close eye on them and interrogate them. Contact the city lord and order him to enforce the no-fly order within 15 kilometers of the Sword Seek Peak. No cultivators are to fly on their swords. Otherwise, kill without mercy. Chapter 1562. Yes. Grandson, I'll do it now. A white-faced cultivator, who was the grandson of the sword servant and also the manager of the sword villa, immediately left after hearing the order. The pavilion was silent. Everyone looked at each other and felt a little uneasy as they listened to the music of the concubine. Everyone could tell that the sword servant wasn't in a good mood, but they didn't dare to ask or breathe too loudly. Ancestral patriarch, you're the disciple of the sword god. The sword villa has been thriving these years. In time we won't even be afraid of the 6 grotto heavens. Only Tong Qing sat down beside the sword servant and said in a sweet voice, even though we've offended some sects, they're not qualified to compete with us. Just lie down on the ground and die. What are you worried about? Yes, master, don't worry. The sword villa is the most powerful in the province. No one dares to stir up trouble. Many disciples finally dared to speak. They were all comforting the sword servant. I've been feeling uneasy these days, as if something bad is going to happen. I'm a little worried. The sword servant smiled bitterly and said, anyway, there's nothing wrong with being careful. Don't go out so easily these days. He narrowed his eyes and a trace of vigilance flashed in his eyes. He was worried that Jiang Tian would come. If he were to say this out loud, it would simply be inconceivable. People would think that he was worrying for nothing. After all, Jiang Tian was still at the edge of Penglai. The ruins of deity and the many level 2 worlds were heavily guarded with soul formation cultivators. If Kong Teichu came, he would be courting death. Besides, the arrays in the city were strict. Even a fly would be sensed. Why would they be afraid of Kong Teichu? By the way, Qing, wake up your third uncle and accompany him to the birthday event. Remove the seal on the ice glass sword that the sword god gave him back then and let him carry it with him. The sword servant narrowed his eyes and suddenly said, what? Didn't you say that third uncle is at a critical stage of seclusion and can't be disturbed for 10 years? The ice glass sword is the family's heirloom. We can't use it easily? Tong Qinger's face was filled with shock when she heard this. Humph. The past was the past and the present was the present. Although it is impossible for us cultivators to truly seek fortune, avoid calamity, and be able to predict the future, we are still able to do so. But sometimes, there would be some spiritual signs in his heart. It was still extremely effective. For the sake of caution, they had to be on guard. It would be better for an old man to think too much than for our imperial sword villa to really encounter a great calamity and have an accident. The sword servant said coldly. Yes, Patriarch. Qing will pass on the order now. Tong Qing saw that the ancestor was about to get angry. She was frightened and stood up to leave. Following that, Tong Yujian was still not at ease. He gave another 7 or 8 orders in a row, checking and filling in the gaps. Only then did he feel slightly more at ease. In fact, there were already over 100 Foundation establishment cultivators gathered in the Imperial Sword Villa. They had arrived 3 days ago to celebrate the sword servant's birthday. The sword servant set up a banquet in the front yard. There were spirit fruits and delicacies as well as immortal wine. They even invited many female cultivators from the dual cultivation sect to accompany them. They sang and danced gracefully and the music was pleasing to the ears. All of this was done to prevent Jiang Tian from launching a sneak attack. The sword servant had a very bad feeling. Kong Teichu was a vengeful person. He might very well go to the ruins of deity. After all, he already had the gate of heaven influence. After Tong Qing went to the place where third uncle was in seclusion, she immediately returned to the pavilion in the back garden with a hint of joy. Patriarch, it's done. Third uncle has already broken through to the half-step soul formation realm. He's not far from it. The sword servant finally relaxed a little at this moment and smiled with relief. Your third uncle is quite talented. There are many talents in the Imperial Sword Villa. In 100 years, it might be the 7th grotto heaven. Humph. In the future we can send any disciple to the lower worlds to kill Kong Teichu. We'll tear him into pieces. Tong Qing wrinkled her cute nose and straightened her slender waist. Her plump breasts were even more prominent. She said in a sweet voice, he must have used some tricks to be able to escape from you, Patriarch, right? Otherwise he's just a golden core and nascent soul cultivator from a remote village. He's no match for you. Hearing the 3 words Kong Te Chu, the sword servant's body trembled and there was a hint of fear in his eyes. But there were many juniors and disciples around, so he couldn't lower his prestige. He immediately smiled lovingly. That's right. Back then he had the help of many bandits to attack the old man. Otherwise I would have killed him with one slap. He also wanted to encourage Tong Qing-er, so he smiled lovingly. My Qing-er is very promising. She reached the peak of the foundation establishment level at the age of 18. Even Kong Techu can't compare. What 7 great bandits? Digging up graves, kidnapping innocent women, wantonly indulging in sexual abuse, burning, killing, plundering and committing all sorts of evil deeds. They're just a bunch of vicious dogs. Tong Qing-er said with a righteous face. If Qing-er joins the army one day, I'll definitely kill all of these rebels. I won't spare even a chicken or a dog. Ha! Sword servant, you're so shameless. You Ban Shan and Haizi worked together to attack Kong Techu. How did it become the 7 bandits working together with Kong Techu to attack you? You're twisting the truth and spewing nonsense. Suddenly there was a creepy howl. Suddenly a cold wind blew and the lake water surged, creating huge waves. Fiend Qi rolled in the sky and dark clouds gathered. Ha! Little girl, you said we kidnapped women and wanted to cut off my head. I'm so scared. Ha brother, this girl is not bad. Her skin is soft and her meat is tender. She'll be delicious if you roast her to medium. The laughter was very strange. It sounded as if it came from several directions at the same time. A moment ago it was far away. The next moment it was right in front of them. However, they couldn't see anyone and even their immortal will couldn't detect it. Who's there? You only know how to sneak around in the dark. You're a scoundrel. If you have guts, come out and meet us. Many disciples and juniors were shocked. They stepped into the air and unsheathed their flying swords. They slowly circled around them and looked around vigilantly. Only the sword servant kept calm, but his 3-foot-long sword was also shaking slightly. It was obvious that he was ready to attack. Our lineage is indeed running out of guts. Only in the central galaxy can we find a partner. The other party's voice was light and casual, which made the sword servant and the others even more nervous. All of a sudden a black light flashed. A strange man, bearing his fangs covered in black hair, and with a pair of dark wings on his back, emerged from the rippling space with his head down and his feet up, as if he was hanging upside down from a golden hook. Sword servant, long time no see. An ominous glint flashed in his small bean-like eyes. He transformed into a violent black wind, shattering the void as he attacked the sword servant. It was Fu Heishui. A stinky bat dares to set foot in the sword-controlling villa. You're courting death. The sword servant shouted. The 3-foot-long sword broke into pieces and collided with Fu Heishui. Clang, clang, clang. Sparks flew in all directions and the pieces of space wriggled like dragons. Fu Heishui's body was strong and his movement technique was fast. He appeared and disappeared. He opened his mouth and screamed. The sound waves broke the space and rushed forward like thunder. The sword servant's body was ethereal and agile. His sword moved in the sky. The cold sword chi was unparalleled. The laws boiled like the sea and exploded with terrifying power. Ancestor, destroy this ugly bat. Tong Qing-er's protective talisman was released. He was forced to retreat. She shouted loudly and her eyes were full of hatred and disgust. Come, 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 destroy us. Little girl, you have tender skin, red lips and white teeth. You're quite cute. Why is your mouth so cheap? Suddenly, another spatial fluctuation tore open and Fu Huiren roared as he charged out. He was over 30 m tall, and his demonic chi surged while devil chi shot into the sky. He had a savage expression and his protruding fangs were terrifying to the extreme. As soon as he appeared, the area within a radius of 10 miles was filled with rolling dark clouds, layer upon layer. Within the clouds, green thunder exploded like a winding dragon. The terrifying mana instantly enveloped the entire Imperial Sword Villa, bombarding and scouring without restraint. The terrifying aura caused the hearts of countless mortal cultivators in the city to tremble, and their guts to shatter. This is too terrifying. 2 soul formation cultivators are here. At this moment the hosts and guests of the sword-controlling villa were dumbfounded. They were so terrified that they forgot to resist or even run away. Chapter 1563. Bang bang bang. As soon as he appeared, he had yet to make a move. The terrifying lightning and sound waves blew the concubine and the 3 building foundation stage disciples into pieces. Blood splashed everywhere and broken bones flew everywhere. Don't kill me. As for Tong Qinger, who was directly facing Fu Huairan, she was so scared that her face was as white as paper. Her legs were shaking as if she had seen a devil. Her pants were instantly soaked in urine. She had only stepped into the Foundation establishment realm not long ago. Facing a demonic god in the soul formation realm, she was simply not enough to fill the gaps between the opponent's teeth. Uncle just wants to talk to you about life and dreams. Don't cry, don't be afraid. Joining the army to kill enemies is not a problem, but don't suppress bandits. Fu Huairan bared his teeth and let out a strange howl. He reached out his hand and swept away the dozens of tiny flying swords released by the sword servants. Then he grabbed Tong Qing, or like an eagle grabbing a chick. He opened his mouth and let out a shrill cry, breaking the space and flying away. Fu Huairan is a semi-god realm cultivator after all. What's the point of bullying a little girl? The sword servant roared. His hair and beard stood on end as his sleeves fluttered in the wind. Fragments of the sword Dao crazily exploded, forcing Heishui Fu to retreat step by step. With a flash, he chased after Fu Huairan. I do bully little girls. What's wrong? If you have the guts, why don't you bite me? Fu Huairan soared through the air, flying off into the distance. Do you dare to fight me? The sword servant was furious. He knew what kind of fate his great-great-granddaughter would face if she fell into his hands. Sword light tore through the void to stop him. Are you kidding? Fighting with an old man is like having one foot in the coffin. I have absolutely no interest in fighting with you. Fu Huairan turned around and ran. His fleshy wings tore the space apart and his tongue licked Tong Qinger's face. The barbs scraped her tender skin until it was bleeding. Everyone was speechless. Fu Huairan was indeed a bad person. Considering the lifespan of a soul formation expert, the sword servant was still very young. Furthermore, he had a head full of black hair and did not have many wrinkles. He was completely different from an old man, but Fu Huairan was still teasing him. The sword servant was so angry that he almost went mad. His name shook the ruins of immortality, so who dared to disrespect him like this? He was absolutely furious. However, his great-great-granddaughter was in the hands of someone else, so he could only restrain himself. As he chased after Fu Huairan, he said solemnly, Fu Huairan, you have the bloodline of an ancient fiend god and are incomparably noble. Don't you feel ashamed to run away without fighting and abduct young girls? I don't think so. Fu Huairan didn't seem to care at all. He spoke lightly, making people feel that he had the strength but couldn't hit him. He flapped his wings and flew wildly without stopping for a moment. I am challenging you. The sword servant spoke with an oppressive aura. He stepped on the void, like a sword immortal descending from the 9 heavens. Fragments of sword Dao continuously erupted. I refuse. Fu Huairan said righteously as he sped forward. This old man is seriously challenging you. The sword servant was driven mad. His opponent's spatial speed had reached the realm of perfection and he couldn't injure him at all. I'm also rejecting you very seriously. Please don't doubt my attitude, Fu Huairan said seriously. The sword servant was in a daze. These shameless bandits were truly shameless. Even if they didn't dare to fight, they still spoke in such a righteous manner. They didn't feel the slightest bit of shame and even looked so arrogant. Where did his sense of superiority come from? In the blink of an eye, they had chased for over 100 miles. That's right. Kill me if you have the guts. Fu Huairan stopped in front of me and smiled proudly, as if he was waiting for his sword servant to kill me. Today I will kill you and avenge my descendants. Let go of my great-great-granddaughter. The sword servant was enraged. He flew into the air on his sword and chased after him. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Both of them were at the soul formation realm. They were extremely fast, like shooting stars catching up with the moon. They left behind 2 streaks of light in the air with long tails like 2 streaks of light, one black and one green. They tore through the sky and reached 100 miles in an instant. Do you think I can't kill you just because you entered the demonic corpse mountain range? The sword servant was ruthless. His Dao laws broke through the void, tearing apart the void. Like a violent storm he attacked Fu Huairan. Your delicate great-great-granddaughter is in my hands. Be careful not to hurt her. Fu Huairan broke through the space with sound waves, appearing and disappearing from time to time. He always kept a distance of 25 miles from the sword servant. He seemed to be very relaxed and even kindly reminded him. Finally, the two entered the depths of the mountain range. Fu Huairan abruptly stopped in his tracks and hung upside down on a towering ancient tree with his head upside down and feet down. Fu Huairan, why aren't you running anymore? The sword servant thought that he had exhausted his dharma power and sneered in his heart. The sword radiance of laws danced wildly and completely enveloped Fu Huairan. He shouted coldly, "Let go of my great-great-granddaughter. Didn't they say that the bandits were extremely vicious and murderous? Why are they so shameless like thieves?" The guests in the courtyard were speechless. They thought that the crisis was over and were about to leave. Haha. I'm the vicious one who killed people. Let's have a try. At this time, an abnormally tall and wild man with tiger stripes on his forehead suddenly appeared in the sky above the courtyard. He was carrying an array disc the size of a millstone. Tu Fei. Tu Fei, the king of destruction. Wherever Tu Fei goes, not even chickens or dogs are left alive. Everyone was horrified. Stepping on their swords, they leaped up and down like grasshoppers in a bonfire, fleeing in haste. You all know my name. It's your honor to die in my hands. Tu Fei's eyes flickered. He was extremely ferocious. The exploding crystal array disc smashed down and exploded. Boom. A giant mushroom cloud rose into the sky, and the palace was shattered like a sand sculpture under a heavy hammer. Rocks were crushed into powder and countless defensive magic formations and defensive spells were torn into pieces like paper. The entire area within a radius of 100 miles was quaking. That was an array disc that was almost a Dao artifact. Jiang Tian had taught it how to make it, but it was more powerful than a Dao artifact and was almost as powerful as a sacred artifact. It was equivalent to at least 10 soul formation cultivators attacking together and burning their divine powers. Most of the cultivators in the courtyard were at the foundation establishment level. There wasn't even a half soul formation cultivator. How could they withstand it? It was like an ordinary person facing a nuclear weapon. They were instantly turned into powder. Even their divine souls, golden cores, nascent souls, protective treasures and dharma treasures were crushed into the tiniest particles. Who dares to invade the sword villa? Do you want to die? Tong Qing's third uncle had sword-like brows, starry eyes and an extraordinary bearing. He just flashed out from his closed-door cultivation and cursed exasperatedly. He didn't even have time to take out the ice-glass sword. Before he died, his face was still full of shock and unwillingness. He couldn't understand how the sword villa offended such a terrifying being. At this moment, the entire Danzhou city was shaking violently as if a hurricane had passed through, destroying everything in its path. Some cultivators and guards who were observing from 10 miles away were knocked off their feet by the airflow and spat out blood. When the sound stopped and the smoke and dust settled, the 3,000-meter-tall sword-seeking peak in the sword villa had disappeared. Not only were they razed to the ground, but there was also a huge bowl-shaped pit with a radius of 10 miles. The sword servant had already sensed everything with his powerful spiritual sense. The soul tablet on his waist made a series of beeping sounds. The light that represented the vitality of his descendants' souls was extinguished, leaving only Tong Qing's light that was still shining. Seeing this, the sword servant cried blood and tears. He was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He roared, "Despicable! How dare you lure the tiger away from the mountain, destroy my foundation and destroy my family. I will annihilate the great Ko family." This was a great destruction. The entire sword villa was wiped out. None of the cultivators escaped. They were all dead. Among them were the sword servant's descendants. They were all blown to ashes, which meant that the sword servant's family was wiped out. Fu Huairan smiled but didn't say anything. He was very calm. "Oh no, I've been ambushed." The sword servant was suddenly shocked. He was alarmed and his expression changed drastically. Chapter 1564. Annihilate the great Ko family? How arrogant. Do you have what it takes? Suddenly, a mighty and dignified figure soared through the sky and flew over. Profound water coiled around him while flood dragons roared with the laws of flood dragons around him, An azure-colored treasured light gushed out like a rising radiance. He had a towering horn on his head and his entire body was covered in azure scales. He was like a god, and his imposing aura swallowed a myriad of kilometers and suppressed the world. Green Flood Dragon King. The sword servant was shocked and his face turned pale. He quickly withdrew the sword Dao and circled around his body to defend himself. Don't you like to be besieged? Today I'll let you have a taste of being besieged. A withered and skinny old farmer laughed and walked over lazily. His muscles were bulging and his divine treasures were trembling. The godly bull god roared and surrounded by Dharma. His aura soared into the sky. He stomped on the ground and the mountains shook. Nyo Duo Tian. The sword servant's cold sweat poured down like a waterfall. His legs trembled and he staggered, almost falling from the sky. My friends, why are you still talking? Send him to hell. A giant white crane flapped its wings and flew over. It spoke in human language and landed behind the sword servant. It then turned into a handsome man wearing a feather robe and a star crown. He held a crane beak in his hand and carried a long sword with a white scabbard on his back. He looked handsome and ethereal like an immortal. His eyes were cold to the extreme. The bone-chilling sword chi swept over and made the sword servant's hair stand on end. Yun Zhongzi had also arrived. You don't know how to cooperate. I said I would kill him. It's a long-cherished wish. Since you guys are so close, I can only use the 9 moves of the tiger god. Tu Fei also arrived. He put away the exploding crystal. He held the tiger claw saber in his left hand and the tiger tail whip in his right. He looked majestic like a tiger out of its cage. To avenge Tai Chu, of course, I have to make sure nothing goes wrong. Nyo Duodun laughed and puffed out green smoke from his big nostrils. Fu Huiran was in the front, Nyo Duotian was on the left, the Green Dragon King was on the right, Yun Zhongzi was at the back and Tu Fei was at the top. Some of them had devilish looks, some were bearing their fangs, some were muscular and some were covered in green scales. The gods roared and extremely powerful Dharma laws intertwined. They surrounded the sword servant like an inescapable net with endless power. Clouds rolled in 1,000 miles in the sky. Even a top soul formation cultivator could be killed by them. How did Kong Techu find so many semi-divinity realm bandits? Also, none of them are weaker than our Grand Patriarch. It's too scary. At this moment Tong Qing was horrified. Her beautiful face lost all color, and her curvy and delicate body trembled slightly. Her breasts rippled violently. Sword servant, you've finally come. It's time to settle the score. At this moment, Jiang Tian finally showed up. He leaned lazily on a mountain rock and said leisurely. Behind him, Ghost Wolf stood respectfully, Long Xingnan was holding a fruit plate full of spirit fruits, and Bai Muxue was holding a pot of thunder fire wine, pouring it into Jiang Tian's jade cup. At this moment, old demon Jiang was enjoying himself. The beauties were his slaves, the saintesses were his servants, and the divine generals were his servants. Kong Techu, so it was you who set me up and killed my family. Shameless, despicable. The sword servant's eyes twitched and he felt cold all over. His heart fell into the abyss and his scalp almost exploded. Jiang Tian's strength was on par with his. Now that he had the help of so many semi-divinity realm warriors, there was no way he could survive. Despicable, despicable, set you up. Childish, what a joke. Jiang Tian sipped the thunderfire wine, smacked his lips and smiled leisurely. This is a war of life and death. Everything is done with the goal of eliminating the enemy. You were competing with your sect back then. Why do you care about the rules? Jiang Tian's eyes were filled with mockery. He raised his hand and pointed at him with a smile. You are the servant of the sword god, a semi-divinity realm warrior who has been through hundreds of battles. How can you say something so childish? You really disappoint me. Senior Tai Chu, please don't kill me. We are willing to follow you and be your servants. To be honest, my talent is not bad. I have already reached the foundation building level and I am still a virgin. At this moment Tong Qing'er's beautiful eyes moved gently as she spoke in a soft voice. At first she thought that since Jiang Tian was an unparalleled fiend who had stirred up bloody storms and slaughtered thousands of miles away, he would definitely look strange and ferocious. But he never imagined that Jiang Tian was actually so handsome and refined, as if he was the son of a god that had descended to the mortal world, an immortal that had descended to the mortal world. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Jiang Tian's charm was no less than the princes of the ruins Emperor Palace and the children of Grotto Heavens. When she saw Long Xingnan, who was weaker than her, beside Jiang Tian, she was immediately envious and had an idea. Hearing that, Long Xingnan immediately curled her lips and looked alert. She thought that Tong Qing'er was so shameless. How dare she covet the Taichu heavenly emperor and flirt with him in public? Bai Mushua's beautiful eyes flickered as she looked at Jiang Tian nervously. In fact, even though they were both women, she had to admit that Tong Qing'er was very beautiful. She was dressed in purple and her figure was curvy. Her legs were long and slender and her skin was fair. Her waist was slender and graceful and her chest was high. Her skin was as smooth as fine jade, and she had an unruly and adorable aura. Moreover, her foundation was not bad. She had already stepped into the foundation establishment realm at such a young age. She was much stronger than Bai Muxue. At this moment, Tong Qing'er purposely puffed out her proud chest to show off her assets. She revealed a shy expression as if she was at his mercy. She was also quite confident that Jiang Tian would not be able to resist her fatal temptation. After all, many members of the royal family were fond of her and treated her like a goddess. Unexpectedly, she only saw boundless coldness in Jiang Tian's eyes, as if they were ice that would not melt for thousands of years. Tong Qing'er suddenly felt a bone-chilling cold, and her heart was filled with extreme fear. She heard Jiang Tian's mocking voice as if it came from above the 9 heavens. "Ha! You ugly freak who pees everywhere, and you want to be my servant? Why don't you look in the mirror and see how terrible you are?" Jiang Tian's every word was like a hammer that smashed into Tong Qing'er's heart, making it difficult for her to breathe. Jiang Tian said disdainfully, "Foundation establishment talent? What kind of joke is this? You are just a bottle of spiritual medicine. Your cultivation was forcefully piled up by spiritual medicine." Tong Qing'er's face had already lost all color. Tears were flowing down her cheeks and she was so scared that she was about to pee on the spot again. Jiang Tian glanced at the sword servant leisurely and said with a smile, "Sword servant, didn't you say that we killed your entire family? There is still one who is not dead. Since you are framing us, we will not bother to refute. Let's grant your wish." In the next moment, Jiang Tian's face froze. He smiled and said, "Fu Huairan, don't you like to eat raw? This bottle of spiritual medicine is very nutritious. Big. Fu Huairan bit his body, and his head suddenly expanded to the size of a millstone. He opened his mouth and his teeth were like sawtooth blades. Amidst Tong Qing'er's pleas and the sword servant's screams, he swallowed Tong Qing'er. He chewed with crunching sounds. The friction between the teeth and the bones made a crisp sound that made people's hearts palpitate. Even the clothes were spat out from the corner of his mouth. At this moment, Fu Heishui came sneakily. Seeing this scene, he said gloomily, "Brother, you always like to eat raw. Actually, I prefer to eat cooked. Medium well is the best. Roasting on the fire until oil drips out, the inside is very tender and the taste is very good. Why do you want to eat raw? You are dirtying your body, aren't you? Medium well is not good. There is no freshness. Eating raw is the best. It will squeak when you eat it." "It is the most delicious," Fu Huairan said leisurely. "Besides, this is an order from the Taichu Heavenly Emperor. How can I not carry it out immediately?" "You are wrong. Roast her until she is medium well and let her suffer endless pain. Only then will the sword servant be heartbroken and the Lord be happy," Fu Heishui said leisurely. Fu Huairan was stunned. Unfortunately, she had already entered his stomach. "Kong Taichu, you are in cahoots with demons and instructing them to eat their own kind. You are a demon on earth." The sword servant's eyes were about to crack as he shouted at the top of his lungs. "Those who are kind to me are kind and those who are evil are evil." Jiang Tian was completely at ease. His face was as calm as an ancient well without ripples as he casually said, he said leisurely, "Your narrow-minded view of clans is the most unacceptable. You descendants of the Ruins Emperor are also humans. However, in the era of Dao damage, you attacked the natives of the deity ground who are also humans. You occupied my territory. Do you think I should treat you as good friends? Kong Taichu, I will fight you to the death." Hearing this, Tong Yujin seemed to be roaring with extreme anger. The law of sword rumbled as it charged towards Jiang Tian. Suddenly, a crystal talisman at his waist flashed, and he shot towards the mountain wall behind him. He suddenly disappeared as though he had passed through the mountain. It's a rare Taoist artifact, Earth Escape Crystal Talisman. Seeing this, everyone's expression changed slightly. Where can he run to? Jiang Tian's expression did not change. He picked up the purple grape that Long Xingnan had given him and stuffed it into his mouth. Suddenly an angry roar came from the thick soil of the mountain wall. "Old man, you stepped on my foot." With a loud rumble, the ground rose and collapsed 15 kilometers away as though an earth dragon was rolling. It was as though the sea had turned into mulberry fields. Suddenly rubble flew through the air. The mountains shook and trees were sent flying. Tong Yujian was kicked by a strange man. He flew back like a rubber ball. It was Ying Long, who was hiding underground. He had attacked at that moment. Great Wall of Sword Aura. The sword servant's clothes were ragged. He was instantly surrounded. Suddenly, a 3-foot-long sword jumped out from behind him. He held the sword in his hand and burned his god's origin. He raised his eyebrows and slashed with his sword. Chapter 1565. The sword radiance soared like the sun in the sky, shining in all directions. All of a sudden, a majestic rectangular city appeared. It was about 1,000 feet long and was completely formed by natural laws. It revolved around the city and surged outwards. It instantly dispersed the surging demonic qi and crushed the mountains. It suppressed everyone and rampaged about. That was the unique skill he had learned in his life. It was taught by the god of swords and was even more powerful than the fragments of swordsmanship. He had never used it successfully before. At that moment he was surrounded and his life was hanging by a thread. He stimulated his potential and made up his mind to create the Great Wall of Sword Aura. The Great Wall of Sword Aura was formed by the laws of Sword Aura. It was protected by the Great Wall of Sword Aura and was full of unyielding fighting spirit. The Great Wall of Sword Aura was extremely solid. Every brick and stone was lifelike. There were even countless shadows of armored soldiers and white-robed swordsmen jumping and roaring on it. "Raise your swords." As the horn was blown, there was a thunderous shout. Within the Great Wall of Sword Qi, the soldiers and cultivators either drew their bows and arrows and shot into the sky, or threw their halberds like javelins. Tens of thousands of flying swords and all kinds of weapons left the top of the city wall and pierced towards the crowd. The sword qi was brilliant, indestructible, and incomparably sharp. It poured out like a flood breaking through a dam. Nothing in the world was more spectacular than that. The Great Wall of Sword Aura was comparable to that of hundreds of nascent soul cultivators, tens of thousands of golden core cultivators and foundation establishment cultivators. The sword servant trembled after that attack. He stepped back 3 steps and spat out a mouthful of blood. But he didn't look upset. Instead, he looked delighted. He thought that was the most powerful attack he had ever made in his life. Even half of the gods had been burned and paid the price with blood. It could definitely injure the soul formation cultivators and open a bloody path for them. Interesting. Let's see if your Great Wall of Sword Aura or my Crane Divine Sword is more powerful. Yun Zhongzi raised his sword-like eyebrows and shouted. A long sword covered with feather patterns suddenly jumped out of the white scabbard on his back and fell into his hand. Yun Zhongzi's handsome face was overflowing with murderous intent. Dao patterns appeared under his feet, making him look like a divine white crane. His body turned into a white light, and with a shake of his long sword, he pierced toward the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Instantly, white cranes with long legs, long necks, long beaks, red crowns, and snow-white feathers appeared in the sky. There were a few thousand of these white cranes, and when they appeared, they were ethereal and ethereal. They stood tall and slender like the most beautiful dancers as they flew up and down while emitting light cries. Their movements were graceful, elegant, and pure, and they were like immortal birds from the primeval times. All of a sudden, it let out a long roar that reverberated through the clouds. The sound of thunder shook the heavens. Their wings were folded on both sides of their bodies, and their legs were stretched straight backward. Their bodies were almost in a straight line, and with their beaks as the tip they attacked forward. From this perspective, it was like a snow-white sword body, sparkling and shining as it pierced through the air. In reality, its long beak was indeed glowing. It was different from ordinary white cranes. Its beak was snow-white and sparkling, releasing sword energy. Like a flying sword. At this moment, the corner of sword servant Tong Yujian's eyes twitched as he let out a soft cry of surprise. He suddenly felt uneasy. These immortal cranes were using their bodies as swords. They were completely formed by the immortal crane Great Daoan laws as they swept through the sky. Their entire bodies were surrounded by brilliance and sword rays shot out. They were invincible. In the sky, the white cranes were too fast. They surpassed the speed of Ghost Wolf and the Fu brothers, and were chasing the speed of Jiang Tian's Kun Peng. They were no different from flying swords. In the sky, the two types of sword energy laws collided heavily. Sparks flew everywhere and the cracks in the space were colorful. Under the violent attack of the immortal crane divine swords, the great wall of sword chi only lasted for 3 seconds before it collapsed and exploded inch by inch. How is this possible? Your great Daoan laws are completely compatible with this world. Tong Yujin roared with unwillingness and fear. However, after the white crane divine swords destroyed the great wall of sword chi, they were almost completely exhausted. They let out an unwilling cry, and cracks covered their bodies as they shattered into pieces in the sky. Fortunately, at least help me block one attack. Tong Yujin did not say anything else. His sword light pierced through the sky and shot into the distance. Are you running away? How arrogant! Niu Duotian let out a loud roar. His aura surged like a bull as he stomped on the ground, causing the ground to crumble. Like a demonic bull plowing through a courtyard, he threw out a punch. His divine fist was unparalleled. The violent force was like a broken dam and it contained fragments of the great Tao. The demonic bull's laws lingered and formed countless shadows. It was incomparably domineering and it could swallow mountains and rivers. Plang! Tong Yujian's protective sword light exploded under the boundless and irresistible force. Like a scarecrow, he was blasted 10 miles away and heavily smashed into the mountain wall. At this moment his clothes were ragged and there was a fist mark on his chest. His body was covered in blood, and there were a few fine cracks on his divine treasures. Bullying the weak with numbers, what kind of ability is that? The sword servant was furious. He roared and rushed out from the mountain rocks. Divine blood splattered everywhere. His sword pierced through the sky, and the dense sword chi like a long river rushed toward Niu Duan. As the sword god's servant, he was no different from his disciple. He had a high position in this world and countless people respected and revered him. But he was ambushed by Jiang Tian and his family was annihilated. Now he was surrounded by many bandits and he was beaten black and blue. At this moment he was furious. He was mad with hatred and he was unwilling to admit defeat. Niu Duotian's demonic bull laws belonged to the strength class. It was as powerful as a mountain and it could move mountains and fill seas. It could destroy cities and countries, but it was not fast. Just as the sword chi, sword light and laws were about to reach him. Old bull, let me help you. Suddenly Fu Heishui flew over and grabbed him. With a strange howl, the sound wave blasted out and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Boom. Boom. The place where Niu Duotian was standing was filled with rubble. A mountain that was thousands of feet tall was flattened. The sword light and laws lingered for a long time. The veins on the sword servant's forehead were throbbing. He was not afraid of those divine transformation realm warriors if he fought them alone. But when they worked together, their power was not simply stacked, but increased by 100 times. Basically, he had no hope of escaping. I don't know how long I can last. I hope my friends from the ruins Emperor Palace can come and save me. The sword servant's eyes were filled with hatred as he crushed the voice transmission jade talisman. That voice transmission jade talisman was very important as it reached the heavens. The ruins Emperor Palace would sense it immediately and send out more than 10 divine transformation realm warriors, and even the royal divine transformation realm warriors. The wearer could not crush it easily even if he was in danger of dying. He could only crush it when facing enemies that could destroy the world. As long as the 10 divine transformation realm warriors of the ruins Emperor Palace come, you won't be able to kill me. You might even have to stay here. After crushing the voice transmission jade talisman, the sword servant's eyes turned cold. Without another word, he took out a protective bell, wanting to cover himself. Even if we want to bully you with numbers, what can you do? Two-faced tiger tail whip came crashing down from the sky. The tiger god's law rumbled and descended from the sky. Shadows of mountain peaks appeared one after another, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Clouds came from dragons and winds came from tigers. Apart from the tiger god laws, there were also astral winds and other wind elemental laws. They were cold and could break one's divine soul. A wisp of them could easily kill a Foundation Establishment realm warrior, and even severely injure a golden core. Open! The sword servant roared. The purple golden bell floated in the air and emitted thousands of purple beams of light. It covered the top of his head and clashed with the tiger tail whip. The bell rang and the purple bell trembled. Countless purple clouds spewed out. The sword servant was injured. His skin was torn and his flesh was bleeding. The purple golden bell was a superior-grade defensive doctrine artifact made of Tao Calamity purple gold. It was extremely expensive and rare. It was one of the top materials in this world. Ban Shan had personally led the Divine Craftsman Hall to make the purple golden bell. Even the sword god of the ruins Emperor Palace had injected a wisp of his doctrine fruit into it. Once it was used, it was equivalent to blocking an attack for an upper-level Divine Transformation Realm warrior. Chapter 1566. The sword servant had yet to fully unleash his attack. Two-phase attacks were too fast, and the sound waves and nomological attacks inflicted damage to the sword servant. Furthermore, the tiger tail whip was an ancient supreme treasure that contained the power of the 3 mountains and 5 peaks. It was passed down from the divine general of the world, Mountain Tiger God. Mountain Tiger God was besieged by the experts of the ruins of immortality, and before he perished he was unwilling to let Ruins Emperor and company benefit from it. He even sacrificed his own deity to it to bless his descendants. Therefore, the might of the Tiger God whip was in no way weaker than the purple golden bell. Its strength was close to that of a sacred weapon. Sword servant, I once said in the Forest of Steels that if you're unable to kill me, then I'll definitely tear you into pieces even if I have to go to the ends of the earth. Do you think I'm deceiving you? Jiang Tian's expression was cold as he did not make a move. He leaned lazily on the mountain rock, and under the service of 2 beautiful maidservants, he ate spirit fruits and drank strong alcohol as he watched calmly from the sidelines. Kung Teichu, if you have guts, fight me one-on-one. Let's fight to the death. Tu Fei lashed out with his whip again and again, causing the purple golden bell to tremble. The sword servant constantly spewed out blood from the tremors as he glared hatefully. Do you think you have the right to fight me to the death? Jiang Tian fanned himself gently as he spoke in a calm and leisurely tone. He looked like a cultured scum that left one gnashing their teeth in hatred. My strength has increased greatly. Killing you is as easy as killing a chicken. There's no challenge at all. However, trash like you will be used as a whetstone to temper my subordinates. The sword servant was driven mad with hatred as he spewed out a mouthful of blood. It was a great humiliation. A sword servant as strong as the Academy's Grand Chancellor could only be used as a whetstone for a bunch of bandits to temper their cultivation. How tragic was that? His body shattered as his flesh split open. A portion of his muscle fibers fluttered like silk and even his bones were exposed. However, he used a mystic technique to constantly repair his damaged body. He rapidly healed before being torn open again. Such a healing mystic technique was similar to the Ruins Emperor's art of the 9 Heavens swordsman formula. It could also be a cultivation technique that used laws to connect the injured parts, crisscrossing them. Flying. Everyone did not give him a chance at all and attacked together. Flying Tiger Saber slashed down crazily. Yun Zhongzi also used the immortal crane divine sword to grind and cut. Yi Chun waved the large scissors and cut. The purple golden bell could not withstand the attacks and began to crack. I'll stomp you to death, you coward. In the end, Niu Duotian let out a roar and transformed into the demon ox god. He stood up like a human and stomped down with his hooves. Bang! At this moment, the old ox had completely activated the bloodline of the ancient immortal Earth's divine spirit. It was too powerful and terrifying. The purple golden bell flew out at an angle and buzzed incessantly. The sword servant was in an abnormally miserable state. His chest was directly crushed and even his white bones were exposed. Divine blood sprayed out like a fountain as he fell to the ground like a dead dog. You can't kill me. I've already sent a message. Many soul formation generals of the Ruins Emperor's palace have arrived. Even the sword god himself has been dispatched. None of you can escape. The sword servant gritted his teeth and shouted with a face full of jealousy. He had just performed a secret art to defend himself, so his divine treasures weren't damaged. Only his body was broken. The army of sword cultivators of the sword god of the ruins emperor's palace was taught by the sword god himself. They were more powerful than the 9 guards and had extremely fast reactions. Even if they were hundreds of thousands of miles away, they could arrive in an instant with a large teleportation array. Go to hell. You're still so stubborn when you're about to die. Yichun was furious. He swung the large scissors and slapped it over as if he were hitting a baseball. Ancestral patriarch Yi Gongming had fought with the sword servant before and was surrounded by danger. He had almost lost his life in the forbidden land of the Steels. He was extremely resentful. Yi Gongming wanted to guard planet Xian and let Yichun follow Jiang Tian to fight in the ruins of deity to make a name for himself. He had also given the family heirloom scissors to him. This was an extremely powerful Dao artifact. Now that the Dao patterns and talisman arrays had all been modified and refined by Jiang Tian, it had already merged with the Dao of this world. Its power had increased by 10-fold or even 100-fold. It directly shattered the sword servant's defensive law divine light and shattered his head. Crystalline bone fragments and teeth splattered everywhere. His head was almost shattered and his chin was smashed. It was extremely terrifying. My god has long been completed. With your strength you can only destroy it in an hour. By then the sword cultivators of the ruins emperor's palace will be here. The sword servant fell to the ground and roared like a trapped beast. His eyes were about to crack as he threatened in an unyielding manner. His deep pupils were overflowing with terrifying divine light. He knew that begging would be useless for such a mortal enemy. He might as well be tough and scare off Jiang Tian. Damn. There's still an hour left. 10 flicks of the fingers will do. Tu Fei roared. He had the temperament of a bandit and was especially ferocious. All sorts of killer moves of the 9 stances of the tiger god were used to bombard his divine treasures and severely injure his god. I stomp, I stomp. I stomp, stomp, stomp. God Niu Duotian exploded as his bull-sized hooves fell like raindrops. Every strike shook heaven and earth. Immortal crane divine sword. Yun Zhongzi's face was as cold as steel. His cold eyes were emotionless as the immortal crane divine swords tore through the air. No, why are your laws and great Dao so much stronger than before? Under the joint attacks of everyone, the sword servant was shocked to find that his god had a terrifying crack in 3 flicks of the fingers. The laws and great Daos of the bandits were actually 10 times, 100 times sharper and more condensed than before. Their power had increased exponentially. With the guidance of the Grand Primordium Celestial Emperor, we have already undergone a reform. Our techniques have reached the limit and are compatible with the great Daos of this land. We can even seize the creation of the great Daos. Rest in peace. Yichun grinned hideously. His white teeth were terrifying as they flickered with a ferocious light. He cut his scissors and stabbed forward. The sword servant god was severely injured. One of his arms was cut off. He let out an earth-shattering roar that shook the great Daos of the ruins of immortality. For a moment lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Lead clouds gathered within 1,000 miles, shocking everyone. It was a brutal siege. The sword servant was heavily besieged and couldn't escape at all. He flew up again and again, but he was intercepted by the Fu Huiran brothers. The immortal crane divine sword pierced through him, Niu Duotian's hooves stomped down crazily, and Green King Dragon's flood dragons and lightning struck. At this moment, even Bai Muxue showed some pity. The sword servant was too miserable. However, she understood that this was a battle of life and death. She had to treat the enemy mercilessly like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. Blood dyed the sky. Crystal clear broken bones flew everywhere. The scene was very bloody and cruel. The physical body of the sword servant was destroyed. Almost only a skeleton was left. His divine treasures collapsed and the god was stained with blood. In the end, when Niu Duotian stomped his hooves again, the sword servant couldn't take it anymore. The god completely collapsed. Retreat. Jiang Tian chuckled. He rolled up his sleeves and flew up into the sky with Bai Muxue. The others also exhaled their breaths and retreated quickly. They had just retreated 100 miles when there was a boom. The sword servant god exploded. The area within a radius of 10 miles was destroyed. The billowing true essence, vast and scattered spiritual power, and raging waves of chi and blood rampaged everywhere. Everyone was thrown off their feet. Their breathing almost stopped. Haha, I killed a soul formation realm cultivator. How satisfying. This old man is quite tough. The clothes of the great bandits fluttered like banners, but they were all extremely happy. Each and every one of them were domineering and overbearing, looking like fiends. Taotai returns to the origin. Jiang Tian looked calm. The bright divine plate behind him flashed and the law of Taotai returns to the origin came out like a black hole, landing in the middle of the billowing airwaves. At the moment, they were surrounded by powerful enemies and the final battle was about to begin. Jiang Tian had to improve his power as soon as possible at all costs. The blood and dharma power of the sword servant were all resources for his cultivation. In an instant, the airwaves rolled back like a picture. In a blink they were all absorbed by the Taotai returns to the origin. Let's go. Jiang Tian didn't refine them right away after absorbing them. Instead he led the others and left quickly. About 15 minutes after Jiang Tian and the others left. Swish swish swish. Many rainbows that seemed to have penetrated the sky split open layers of dark clouds. They tore the air apart and descended with loud noises like supersonic fighter jets. Chapter 1567. 7 peerless sword cultivators, most of whom were at the first or second level of the soul formation realm, suddenly showed up and surrounded a man in a white robe. They stood on top of a mountain and looked down at a giant pit with a radius of 10 miles. That man's white robe was whiter than snow. He had sharp eyebrows and bright eyes, he was tall and straight. He had the body of a god and was emitting auspicious lights like a deity, looking extraordinarily handsome. Many dharma laws rumbled around him. One of them could crush a soul formation cultivator. There were pieces of the Grand Tao floating in the sword chi. His strength was extremely terrifying. He was peerless and sharp. There was a kind of unparalleled power that made him seem like a sword immortal from the 9 heavens descending to the mortal world. His energy suppressed thousands of worlds and he stood at the top of all Taos. Nobody could stop him. They were the sword god of the Emperor Palace and his disciples. The deity has been killed. My disciple, you died so miserably. The corners of the god of swords' eyes twitched. His eyes were filled with anger. Divine light bloomed like swords. At the same time his vast immortal will swept out like waves hitting the shore. It was pervasive and scanned the remaining dharma laws around, quickly identifying the mastermind. Yun Zhongzi, Tu Fei, Niu Duotian, the Green Dragon King, the Fu brothers, Yinglong and Yichun. The 7 bandits are attacking together. How arrogant. Master, the 7 bandits are so arrogant. How dare they attack the sword servants of the Emperor Palace? This is a great provocation. They must be killed. One of the sword servants shouted coldly with a furious expression. He was also at the 3rd level of the soul formation realm, which was on par with the sword servants or even slightly stronger. Even though the 7 bandits were quite powerful and had tens of thousands of troops, they were still incomparable to the regular army of the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality. It was like robbers who robbed banks and killed more people couldn't challenge the police and the regular army, no matter how strong they were. What Jiang Tian and the 7 bandits did that day was equivalent to killing a commander. It was equivalent to a few bandits assassinating a military commander. It could be said that they had risked universal condemnation and pierced through the sky. They felt that their dignity had been greatly challenged, so how could they not be angry? Second brother, have you ever thought about it? The 7 bandits were originally scattered soldiers who fought on their own. Why did they team up? A young sword servant's expression became serious. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's expression changed. They all revealed looks of deep thought. This was a very bad sign. Previously, the sword servant reported that Kong Teichu was rescued by the ancestor of the Hu clan using the Gate of Heaven influence. The young sword servant said in a deep voice. Old 7, you mean to say that Kong Teichu has already united the 7 great pirate families? The second sword servant's sword-like brows suddenly furrowed as he spoke in a cold voice. Very likely. The young 7th sword servant said in a deep voice. Very likely. Kong Teichu has already passed through the Gate of Heaven influence and entered the ruins of immortality. The sword god's expression was still calm, but his eyes kept shooting out sword laws. His tone was as cold as a sword. This kid is really audacious. Everyone knew that the sword god was furious at this moment and he was extremely angry. At this moment he had already released a chilling sword intent, causing their hair to stand on end and their hearts to almost explode on the spot. However, on second thought it made sense. Kong Techu was originally a cultivator from a remote galaxy and was like a speck of dust in their eyes. However, he had risen to power and destroyed the 3 guards and Divine Emperor Xianxia. The sword servants Black and White and Ban Shan had joined forces to besiege him, but he had still managed to escape. Now he had crossed the line of defense and fought his way to the ruins of immortality, to the door of the ruins Emperor's palace, and even killed a sword servant. He was like a little white rabbit jumping up and down in front of a tiger's door, showing off his strength. How could the sword god not be angry? Pass down my order. All the Grotto Heavens families, kingdoms and cities must mobilize all their forces and find Kong Techu at all costs. I want to kill him with my own hands. The sword god's tone was cold, like sword energy that soared into the sky. His biting cold killing intent filled the vast sky as he spoke word by word. Yes, Master. The 7 sword servants bowed in unison and instantly turned into streaks of light and dispersed, spreading the sword god's orders to the various cultivation places. Kong Techu and the bandits have invaded the ruins of immortality. The sword god's sword servant, Tong Yujian of the Imperial Sword Villa, has been wiped out. This Kong Techu is so arrogant that he dares to step into the ruins of immortality, loitering in front of our door. When the news spread, it caused a huge uproar in the ruins of immortality. Many people were shocked and in disbelief. Guard it to the death. Activate the defensive array. Do not allow any unknown cultivator to step in. 3,000 disciples are to move out and cooperate with the ruins Emperor's palace in patrolling. Once Kong Techu is found, do not attack. Report it immediately. Take out the ancestral Tao artifact. I want to carry it with me. All the Grotto Heavens cultivation families, divine lord sects, vassal states, provinces, and cities were on guard as if they were facing a great enemy. They could no longer remain calm and paid close attention. Even the Academy, the ruins Emperor's Palace and the Sky Palace were deeply shocked. The cultivators all felt the arrival of danger and everyone was in danger. After all, they originally felt that Kong Techu was very, very far away from them. He was loitering in the 3rd-class planet at the edge, accumulating strength. But after all, his level was too low and his team was too weak. He didn't dare to enter the ruins of immortality, so they didn't feel much danger. The ruins of immortality had already set up many checkpoints and barriers in the 2nd-class world. Many soul formation cultivators were sent down to guard it. Kong Techu would be blocked outside the front line. A shocking battle would break out in the 2nd-class world battlefield. Even if he was defeated, it would have nothing to do with them. But now, Kong Techu had already killed his way to the ruins of immortality. He had killed the sword servant first, which was very terrifying. The sword servant's identity and strength were well known. He had received the true teachings of the sword god and could be on par with the Grand Chancellor of the Academy and the masters of the families. But he was still killed, which completely proved how terrifying Kong Techu and the bandits were. The most important thing was, Jiang Tian and the others were too ruthless. They directly destroyed the sword villa and left no one alive. Everyone was afraid and worried. After all, if they were fighting in the lower worlds, they could quickly locate Kong Techu. Those worlds were too small. When a few soul formation cultivators worked together, their immortal will could cover a planet and they could quickly locate Jiang Tian. But now, Kong Techu arrived at the ruins of immortality, sneaking around and assassinating viciously. He was despicable and shameless. He hid in the dark and used the gate of heaven influence to escape. It was impossible to catch him, so they had nowhere to use their strength. He was too difficult to deal with. Kong Techu is too powerful. I've never seen such a fierce bandit. He's the first in the history of the ruins of immortality. A Grotto Heaven master sighed. I heard that they formed a new heavenly court and called themselves Heavenly the Arch. The bandits are called Divine Generals of Heaven and Earth. They're going to recover the land and challenge the Emperor of the Ruins. A living fossil who knew the history exclaimed. He's completely unscrupulous. I heard that when the sword servant Tong went to the lower worlds to kill him, he took revenge. Next, I'm afraid it's Ban Shan in Black and White. Someone deduced and was frightened. Whoever dares to attack Kong Techu, we soul formation cultivators will surround and kill him. Blood must be paid with blood. Fu Heishui hung a jade talisman on the wall of a city. It shone for 1,000 feet, sending out a dangerous signal. He was very arrogant and domineering. That was a huge wave. Zhang Tian arrived at the ruins of immortality and joined forces with the bandits to destroy the Sword Villa. It swept across the endless territory of the ruins of immortality, causing a huge earthquake and making everyone uneasy. The Emperor of the Ruins, Sky Palace and the 100 Moon Academy held a joint conference. Many divine crown princes, Grand Preceptor, Chancellor and Minister of Public Works gathered. For a few days they discussed the countermeasures behind closed doors. A gloomy atmosphere enveloped the entire ruins of immortality. Everyone knew that a great war was about to begin. But Zhang Tian, who was at the center of the storm, was very calm. 3 days later, in the eastern part of the ruins of immortality, Zhang Tian and the others were riding a boat on a long river, heading towards the Aqua Moon Grotto heaven. Chapter 1568. It was raining and misty. The mountains in the distance were white and the lakes and mountains were peaceful, like an ink painting. They didn't hurry all the way to the east. They hid in the dark and used the art of deceiving the heavens that Zhang Tian had taught them to hide their energy and change their appearances. The Green Dragon King pretended to be a boatman and the others disguised themselves as farmers, woodcutters, merchants, scholars and maids. They didn't reveal themselves at all. A few scouts passed by in the past 3 days, but they were mainly Foundation establishment cultivators. They scanned with their immortal will but didn't find anything unusual. Everyone had their own fun. Yun Zhongzi wore plain clothes and a green gown, looking like a scholar. He was a man of few words. Watching the wild geese flying away and the flowing water flowing away, listening to the rain hitting the banana leaves, the rustling of the falling flowers, and the flowing of the streams and springs on the rocks, he sometimes had a kind of enlightenment. The Fu brothers and Yo Duotian were drinking and having fun together. They drank a lot of Azure Fire wine, Thunder Fire wine and other kinds of wine. The others were playing mahjong together. They sealed their immortal will and weren't allowed to peek at the tiles. They played very seriously and became gamblers. Zhang Tian had brought them from Earth. After teaching them the rules, they immediately felt the profoundness of the quintessence of the country and played until the sky darkened. They wandered around the mountains and rivers and sailed on boats. Their bodies and minds were extremely relaxed. They let go of their grudges and emotions and escaped. Cultivators didn't kill all the time. They also needed to rest when they were tense. It was a kind of peace of mind and relaxation between battles. It didn't need to be maintained all the time, but it was very necessary. During this time, Zhang Tian took out a phone and showed them many images on Earth. There were planes in the sky, missile launches, modern communication technology and all kinds of smart devices. People lived a peaceful life and worked hard for their lives. We know why the Taichu Heavenly Emperor fought so hard to protect this world. Yun Zhongzi exclaimed. Although the technological civilization on Earth couldn't compete with that of the cultivation civilization, it was full of vitality. There were no monsters wreaking havoc, no wars between sects and grotto heavens and no cruel killings. Relatively speaking, it was more peaceful and happy. There were infinite possibilities. This time their target was the Aquamoon Paradise. Everyone thought that Zhang Tian and the others were going to encircle and annihilate Banshan in black and white, but Zhang Tian and the others deliberately created a diversion. The Aquamoon Heavenly Abode should have a water-type Dharma treasure called the Wind Rain Flag. It was used by the rain-dispensing Heavenly Master of the ancient Heavenly Court. Its power surpasses that of a Tao artifact and can be called a sacred artifact. In the past few days, Bai Muxia had been reading through the ancient scrolls, and she finally managed to deduce the ultimate treasure of the Water Moon Heavenly Abode. Once the flag is unfolded, it will affect the Great Tao of water and harmonize with the Great Tao. It will be able to control the water vapor within 10,000 miles and create a vast ocean. It can also be used as an offensive Dharma treasure. The Great Tao of water can easily obliterate a soul formation cultivator. Bai Muxia's expression was very solemn. She pulled out the silk from the cocoons of the cocoons from the ancient records, straightening out the details and giving some conjectures. Regarding this treasure, there were some records in the books of Planet Xian. The flag was formed naturally, but as a flag it was very powerful and deadly. All kinds of water-type Dharma laws and Great Tao were condensed inside. In fact, the real material of the Wind Rain Flag was still unknown. But one thing was for sure. During the war in the distant era of Tao damage, The flag had killed more than one soul formation cultivator. It was stained with the blood of the deity and had caused a lot of bloodshed. Zhang Tian's reason for attacking the Aquamoon heavenly abode was very simple. They had the water-type material which could help the Xianxia azure dragon to form the nascent soul and Dharma laws to form the seal. Besides, the Aquamoon heavenly abode was one of the 6 grotto heavens that protected the empire of the ruins of immortality. That was enough. A boat was sailing down the river. On both sides were cliffs, mountains, and tigers roared. Zhang Tian stood at the bow of the boat and drank alone. The current was sometimes fast and sometimes slow. Suddenly, Zhang Tian's immortal will was activated. He whispered, "There are sounds of fighting in the distance. It's a large crystal warship." Everyone immediately stopped drinking, put away the mahjong tiles, picked up the chess pieces and scanned the area with their immortal will. They saw 1,000 miles away. A few crystal warships that were 100 feet long were flying in the sky. They were shooting light cannons and arrows at the same time, shattering the mountains and shaking the earth. They were chasing after 2 peak stage nascent soul cultivators. The 2 cultivators were a man and a woman. They were young and had been seriously injured. Their clothes were ragged but they were extremely fast. They were flying on their swords. They were apparently proficient in some kind of concealment art. Suddenly they flashed and fell into the mountains. Their energy merged with the plants around them and they could hide from the detection of immortal will. The crystal warships hovered in the sky and shot randomly, raising an area of 100 miles to the ground. Those crystal warships belonged to the Aquamoon heavenly abode and the Golden Crystal City. "Master, should we chase after them and kill them?" Ghost Wolf asked with his immortal will. He turned into a crow and landed on the awning of the boat. He flapped his wings and his eyes were filled with red light. "Don't worry. Don't alert them." Zhang Tian chuckled and shook his head, but he was very interested in the 2 cultivators who were being chased. "Humph, Jiusha Ji Tianlan, I'll give you a chance today. But if you dare to assassinate the Aquamoon heavenly abode again, I won't let you go. You're just a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. You're just a clown. How dare you offend the dignity of the Aquamoon heavenly abode?" An old man walked out of the largest crystal warship and shouted in a dignified manner. His tiger-like eyes scanned the messy mountain range, then he waved his hand and the crystal warship soared into the sky. That old man is an elder of the Aquamoon heavenly abode. His name is Lin Yu. He's a half-step soul formation cultivator and can be considered a big shot. Ghost Wolf recognized him at first glance. Zhang Tian sighed. Along the way he found that the ruins of deity were indeed very powerful. Nascent soul cultivators, which were rare in a level 3 world, could be seen everywhere. Almost every city had a few. A half-step soul formation cultivator could be called a Dao ancestor in a level 2 world. But in this world he was just an elder of the heavenly abode. He couldn't be the master of the heavenly abode. But according to their style, these 2 cultivators should be from the mortal world's assassin dynasty. Ghost Wolf, who had transformed into a dark crow, combed his black wings with his long beak and spoke with his divine consciousness, giving a guess. The Heavenly Court's assassin dynasty was speculated to be the descendants of the ancient Heavenly Court's 4 great heavenly masters. They thought highly of themselves and specialized in dealing with the ruins emperor's royal family. They were too lazy to make a move on ordinary heavenly abodes or even academies. Moreover, before every operation, they would announce the god-slaying list to the world. Their targets would be frightened and uneasy. Then they would be brutally hunted down in extreme pain and fear. The Hell Assassin dynasty's people were once ancient gods, but they were cursed and polluted by a mysterious curse. Demonic chi surged and they were extremely cruel and wild. But these 2 were just ordinary cultivators. They weren't tainted by demonic chi. Yes, they are adept at concealment. Like a drop of water returning to the sea, they are adept at escaping and hiding. It's impossible to guard against them. It's indeed their style. Zhang Tian was tempted. He wondered if he could cooperate with the mortal world's assassin dynasty. After all, their opponents were the same. Although the 2 assassins were adept at concealment, they were far inferior to Zhang Tian's heaven-deceiving mystic art. They could not avoid the detection of Zhang Tian's divine consciousness. After the 2 landed, they immediately changed positions and fled rapidly. Finally, they hid in a valley hundreds of kilometers away from the crash site. One of them turned into a rock while the other hid in a withered tree. Their auras were indistinct as they blended with their surroundings. The two of them were not injured by the crystal warship's sweeping bombardment. But suddenly Jiang Tian's pupils constricted. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. The two assassin cultivators are in trouble. Elder Lin Yu only made a feint and did not really leave. He has already discovered the two of them and is preparing to surround and kill them. Everyone's divine consciousness scanned the area crazily. It was not until then that they discovered a few crystal warships floating in the sky 3,000 kilometers away. They landed in the mountains and activated the concealment array. At some point in time, Elder Lin Yu had already led a few top-building foundation stage cultivators to surround the two assassins stealthily. Obviously, Elder Lin Yu had already discovered the hiding place of the two assassins. However, he did not want to alert the enemy. He narrowed the encirclement to the limit and killed them in one strike, not giving them a chance to escape at all. Chapter 1569. Fellow cultivators, stop hiding. They've noticed you. Let's run. Jiang Tian spoke to them telepathically and bellowed, kill them. Let's do it. I'll kill Lin Yu. The rest of you grab the crystal ship. It's too slow for us to take a boat. Elder Lin Yu was only 10 kilometers away from the two assassins. For a cultivator half a step away from the divinity transformation stage, he could reach them in the blink of an eye. Unexpectedly, the two of them who hadn't noticed at all suddenly erupted like a divine dragon swinging its tail or a red-crowned crane dancing in the sky, and they fled swiftly towards the distance. How did they notice us? Elder Lin Yu found it hard to believe. But he reacted quickly. He snapped his fingers and two ultra-quality true artifact flying swords flew out, trying to kill the two assassins. At this time, Ji Yuxia and Ji Tianlan were extremely anxious and embarrassed. They never thought that Lin Yu would be so insidious and cunning. He had obviously discovered them, but he did not make a move and turned around to kill them. Bang! Bang! Sensing the quasi-true treasure flying swords coming at them, the two of them threw out numerous magic shields as if they were free. There were more than a dozen of them released at the same time. But they couldn't reach them at all. The shields blossomed in the sky like fireworks. Lin Yu's sword aura was as sharp as a rainbow. It crossed more than 10 kilometers in the blink of an eye and was about to stab the two of them. Brother, what should we do? We can't run away. We can't hold on for long even with the protective suits. Ji Yuxia was very beautiful. Her eyebrows were curved like willow leaves, her lips were small and her skin was snowy white. She was in the prime of her youth and she was delicate and cute. We've sent out the distress signal, but I'm afraid it'll take at least an hour for Dad to arrive with his senior brothers. I'll block the flying swords. Sister, you go first. Ji Tianlan was desperate. He roared and launched a fireball at the flying swords, trying to wear out the power of the flying swords. He knew that he could only block the flying swords for a few seconds before he was exhausted. He was lucky enough to block the flying swords and let his sister escape. Where do you think you're going? At this moment, a few peak stage nascent soul stage cultivators from the Aquamoon heavenly abode showed up in front of them. But could it be that father has come? Just as the brother and sister were in a hopeless situation and their hearts were cold, Ji Tianlan's face suddenly changed and she cried out in alarm. Ji Yuxia looked up. A figure flashed and appeared like a ghost. It was a young man in black robes with black hair draped over his shoulders. Then, with a tap of the air, red flying swords surrounded by the law of fire descended from the sky like a rain of fire. Puff, puff. A few peak stage nascent soul cultivators were terrified, but they had no chance to escape at all. They didn't even have time to scream before they were shredded to pieces by the flying swords. Even their nascent souls couldn't escape. A half-step divine transformation cultivator. Elder Lin Yu's pupils shrank and his face instantly turned ashen. Without another word, he recalled his flying sword and rode it across the sky, fleeing in panic. However, in the next snap of a finger, a 300-meter-tall sea-calming ice god suddenly blocked his way. It opened its bloody mouth and roared, freezing Lin Yu and his sword. Lin Yu's eyes were closed and he was motionless. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. The next moment, swish, swish, swish. Many flying swords of the law of fire and the black Taotai divine beast turned into two torrents, one red and one black, and went back into Jiang Tian's dantian. Lin Yu fell under Jiang Tian's feet like an ice block and had been imprisoned by the forbidden region. So powerful. Jiusha was shocked by Jiang Tian's young age. Although she was a peak-stage nascent soul cultivator and looked young, in fact she had just changed her appearance. Her real age was already over 100 years old. And Jiang Tian was vigorous like the rising sun. He was really only in his 20s. How can he be so powerful? Is he from the heavenly court? Ji Tianlan was shocked, but she immediately stepped forward and bowed. Ji Tianlan, disciple of the assassin dynasty in the human world, greets Senior Divine Lord. Thank you for saving my life. The assassin dynasty will definitely reward you greatly. Jiang Tian nodded slightly. Ji Tianlan asked again, Senior, you should be a senior from the heavenly court, right? Yes, I'm from the heavenly court. Jiang Tian didn't explain carefully. Apart from the new heavenly court there was also a heavenly court assassin dynasty, but that was not important. At this time Jiusha quickly flew over and said anxiously, Senior, they still have a few crystal ships. There may be half-step soul formation cultivators on them. Let's run away quickly. Ah, they're just half-step soul formation cultivators. They can't withstand a single blow. They don't deserve to let me run away. Jiang Tian glanced at her and said leisurely. Hearing that, Ji Tianlan sighed with mixed feelings. But Jiusha shook her head slightly and said coldly, Senior, you've indeed killed a half-step soul formation cultivator. Senior, it's true that you killed a few nascent soul stage cultivators and a half-divinity transformation stage cultivator just now, but you only took the initiative because of your sudden attack. If you were really faced with a couple of half-divinity transformation stage cultivators, you might not have been able to take the upper hand. Besides, the 6 caves, the Ruins Emperor's Palace, the Heavenly Palace and the 100 Moon Academy, are all working together. Once they notice the death of a half-step soul formation cultivator, they will definitely join forces and take action. By then, many half-step soul formation cultivators will come. Nobody can stop them. Don't panic. I'm about to blow up the Water Moon Cave, Jiang Tian said calmly and mocked her in his mind. Soul formation cultivators? He had killed Divine Emperor Hanshi. His strength was far beyond normal soul formation cultivators. But he also understood. Killing Elder Lin Yu had indeed alerted the enemy. So he had to act quickly and not give them any time to prepare. Ji Tianlan's expression changed slightly and she looked suspicious. The Heavenly Court's assassin dynasty had always only killed members of the royal family of the Ruins Emperor. They rarely attacked the caves. Why would they attack the caves today? Senior, what did you say? Jiusha's expression changed drastically after hearing that. She couldn't believe it and looked at Jiang Tian as if he were crazy. There were 1 or 3 soul formation cultivators in the Water Moon Cave. They had a very deep foundation. The mortal world's assassin dynasty could only launch sneak attacks outside the cave. They would never dare to go in or they would be besieged and killed. Even if Jiang Tian was a half-soul formation cultivator, it would be impossible for him to blow up the Water Moon Cave. Jiang Tian was indeed powerful, but in her opinion he was too arrogant and didn't know how to fight at all. Then a few crystal ships returned. Jiusha was immediately startled and she said angrily, Senior, we're in trouble. She seemed to want to reprimand Jiang Tian, but Ji Tianlan hurriedly stopped her. Yusha, don't be disrespectful to Senior. Without his help we would have died just now. Jiang Tian looked calm, but he knew what was going on in his mind. Judging from their reactions, Jiusha was far less loyal than Ji Tianlan and didn't like to push the blame to others. Oh God, they're all soul formation cultivators. While Ji Tianlan activated her Dharma laws and was about to fight, Jiusha glared at Jiang Tian angrily and was about to mock him. Cultivators walked out of the ship one after another and knelt on the ground in unison. They said respectfully, Emperor of the Taichu Heavenly Palace, I didn't let you down. None of the crystal warships escaped. I took all of them. Clang. Jiusha was so shocked that the sword in her hand fell to the ground. She looked at Jiang Tian in disbelief and said in a trembling voice. Those soul formation cultivators are all your subordinates? Emperor of the Taichu Heavenly Palace? Could it be that you're actually the infamous Jiang Taichu? So, you're the divine emperor of the Taichu Heavenly Palace. I'm sorry for my disrespect. Ji Tianlan was also scared out of her wits. Her face was pale and she knelt on the ground with fear and respect. She had never thought that he would be Kong Teichu, the unparalleled killer who killed Emperor Hanshi, led the 7 bandits to kill the sword servants and annihilate the sword villa. In fact, Jiang Tian's achievements were only on par with those of the Heavenly Court's assassins. After all, the Heavenly Court's assassins had killed a lot of members of the royal family, and some of them were even soul formation cultivators. But the problem was that the Heavenly Court's assassins had accumulated their achievements over thousands of years and were the result of the joint efforts of several generations of assassins. As for Jiang Tian, he did it all by himself in less than a year's time. It could be said that Jiang Tian was completely unstoppable and had an invincible attitude. His overbearing bearing caused people to be shocked and fearful. Therefore, in Ji Tianlan's mind, Jiang Tian alone was enough to suppress the Heavenly Court's assassins, and she even regarded Jiang Tian as her idol. How could she not be scared? Besides, Jiang Tian had also united the 7 bandit families. He could totally be on par with the 3 assassin dynasties. Get up. Jiang Tian's expression was calm as he spoke softly. I came to the ruins of deity this time to kill the emperor of the ruins and change the world. This is the time for me to use people. I want to work together with all the tyrants. I wonder if the human world is willing to submit to my new heavenly court? Of course. Senior, you're so powerful. I think my father will be willing to submit to you if he sees you. Ji Tianlan was overjoyed. Not necessarily. My father doesn't have the final say in the human world. We have to report this to my father and have a good discussion before making a decision. Ji Wuxia had a plan in mind. Jiang Tian obviously wanted to take the human world under his command. He called himself the Heavenly the Arch and made everyone submit to him, but he didn't want to be on par with the assassin dynasties of the human world. But as the old saying went, it was better to be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix. How could serving others be as free as occupying a mountain alone? It's your honor to be with me. Could it be that you think you have the ability to compete with me in this world? Jiang Tian chuckled. I wouldn't dare. I didn't mean to offend you. Please forgive me. Ji Wuxia quickly bowed and apologized. But when she lowered her head, her pair of black eyes kept rolling. She didn't look apologetic at all. At this time, beams of sword light came from afar. Ji Wuxia quickly jumped up and said excitedly, the people of the dynasty are here. Dozens of cultivators appeared. Most of them were at the peak stage of the nascent soul stage, and 3 of them were at the soul formation stage. The leader was a middle-aged man in black, who was already at the mid-stage of the soul formation stage. However, their laws were very mysterious. They didn't spread out but only burst out in the surroundings. Their aura was vague and difficult to detect. It was terrifying. Have you been kidnapped? Put it in quickly or I'll teach you a lesson. They stared at Jiang Tian warily. Their eyes were as sharp as knives. They rubbed their fists and were about to fight with Jiang Tian. He's Ji Tao, the emperor of assassins of the human world. This person is famous in the ruins of immortality and has been in awe for thousands of years. He's no less powerful than the 7 great bandits. Ghost Wolf's pupils constricted, and he quickly sent a message with his divine consciousness. Chapter 1570. At this time Ji Tianlan hurriedly said, Father, don't do anything. This is Kong Teichu. He saved us. Ji Tao's expression changed wildly when he heard that, extremely shocked as he said in disbelief, it's actually the renowned Jiang Taichu who arrived. And the masters of the 7 pirate families. Yes, I am. Jiang Tian said leisurely, fellow Taoist Ji's mortal world assassin dynasty is full of talents, and their strength is not bad. This is really worthy of celebration. I wonder if fellow Taoist is willing to lead the heroes and submit to our new heavenly court? Ji Tao was originally flying toward Jiang Tian, intending to pay his respects. However, when he heard those words, beads of sweat flowed down his forehead. His legs wobbled and he nearly fell from the sky. Kong Teichu was indeed arrogant and greedy. He wanted to take away his team as soon as they met. So it's fellow Taoist Grand Primordium. Nice to meet you. I've heard so much about you. However, he still had to show some respect on the surface. He led a few soul formation cultivators to Jiang Tian and greeted him respectfully. After all, Jiang Tian's ferocious reputation was so resounding that it wasn't inferior to theirs at all. It was even to the extent that his strength wasn't the slightest bit inferior to theirs. Ji Tao said with a happy face. Thank you for saving my useless son and daughter. I'll reward you handsomely. Why don't you come to my assassin base nearby? As for joining the new heavenly courts, he didn't even mention it. What a joke. The assassin dynasty in the human world was formed by the elites and descendants of the cultivators on ancient Earth. After thousands of years of killing and robbing, it had accumulated a lot of resources and was as rich as a country. There were 8 soul formation cultivators under its command, which was as powerful as a grotto heaven. How could he let Jiang Tian take advantage of it? It was like he had built a company with great difficulty, but the other party wanted to take it away. Even if Jack Ma asked for it, it wouldn't work. Therefore he only planned to give Jiang Tian some heavenly treasures and treat him with hospitality. That would be the best he could do. I see that fellow Taoist Ji Tao is awe-inspiring and mighty. You are truly a rare talent. Jiang Tian waved his fan lightly and looked like the scum of society. He persevered and said, That's right. I admire you very much. Why don't you join my new heavenly courts? In the future, when we conquer the Ruins Emperor's land, it won't be difficult for you to be conferred the title of Marquis. Do I need your appreciation? Ji Tao's face darkened. He was so angry that his nose was crooked. How could this brat be so shameless? I will be the imperial exterminator, free and unfettered. My words carry enormous weight and hundreds will respond to my call. Wouldn't that be great? I have no intention of hugging your thigh and becoming your lackey. Can't you see that? However, looking at Jiang Tian's appearance, he wouldn't give up so easily. Ji Tao was also worried that Jiang Tian would act out of desperation and shed all pretense of cordiality with him. One had to know that Jiang Tian still had many big bandits following him. It wasn't so easy to deal with them. He pondered for a moment, then said with a smile, Fellow Taoist Tai Chu, to tell you the truth, I'm just a wild crane that is used to being free and unrestrained. I can't stand being restricted. Therefore, forgive me for not being able to comply with your wishes. As the saying goes, a forcibly picked melon is not sweet. Why are you so stubborn, fellow Taoist Tai Chu? A forcibly picked melon is sweet. Jiang Tian said with a smile, You have been killing people and robbing treasures in the human world all these years. How many heavenly treasures have you snatched? How many grotto heavens have you destroyed? I'm afraid you'll suffer great losses. This person. Upon hearing Jiang Tian's judgment, the soul formation mighty figures of the assassin dynasty were so angry that the corners of their eyes twitched. Their faces turned green and they couldn't wait to fight Jiang Tian. This brat is so arrogant and condescending. Ji Yusha's beautiful eyes were so slanted that they could fly out of her eye sockets. She cursed and criticized wildly, treating Jiang Tian as a fanatic who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. However, Jiang Tian ignored their murderous gazes. He was like a bad uncle who was luring children with a lollipop. But it'll be different if you follow me, a peerless emperor. Under my command, we can sweep through all the grotto heavens, destroy the sky palace of the Ruins Emperor and burn down the 100 Moons Academy. Ji Tao almost vomited blood. He smiled with a gloomy face and said, Fellow Taoist Tai Chu, what if I don't agree? Let's fight. Jiang Tian waved his folding fan on the ground and smiled leisurely. Before this, apart from the Ying family and the Yi family, the 7 pirate families also thought highly of themselves. No one was willing to submit to me. Later, Senior Yi Gongming came up with an idea. We'll fight in the small world of Zhiyuan. Those who stand will be called ancestral patriarchs, and those who lie down will be called subordinates. Indeed, the 7 pirate families were no match for him even if we attacked together. Tu Fei coughed and began to flatter him seriously. The Tai Chu Heavenly Emperor is so powerful that even ghosts and gods cry. We admire him so much that we immediately abandoned the darkness and joined the light. How many soul formation realm cultivators do you have in the human world? I'm afraid you won't even be able to defeat the Tai Chu Heavenly Emperor with one punch. Yun Zhongzi sneered and said with disdain. He was surrounded by the crane divine sword and looked like an immortal, but his eyes were full of murderous intent. Fellow Taoists, please fight with me first. You'll only be qualified to challenge the Tai Chu Heavenly Emperor if you can defeat me. Niu Duotian was squatting on the ground, smoking the water pipe with a jasper rod with great interest. He was giggling and the muscles all over his body were bouncing up and down. His fighting spirit was soaring. Wrong. Even if the assassins in the human world can defeat you, they won't be qualified to fight the Taichu Heavenly Emperor. You'll have to defeat the 7 pirates first. Fu Heishui hung upside down in the void and sneered with his arms crossed. He stared at Ji Yusha and drooled. Sensing his greedy gaze, Ji Yusha felt uncomfortable. She frowned and scolded, "Damn it, what are you looking at? Miss Yusha, don't think too much. My brother just wants your body. He's thinking about eating you raw or medium rare." Fu Huiran hung upside down next to Fu Heishui and comforted her with a smirk. "Father, no matter what, you can't agree." Ji Yusha shivered in fear. She felt that Fu Huiran and his brother were like a pair of demons, which made her even more disgusted. None of Kong Teichu's subordinates were good people. They were all monsters and demons. Just looking at them was disgusting. "Yusha, don't say anything. I have my own plans." In fact, Ji Tao's face was pale and his clothes were soaked in cold sweat. He was having an intense mental struggle. Even though old Niu and Fu Heishui seemed to be joking, everyone knew how cruel the 7 pirates were. They were like demons and gods. The meaning behind their words was clearly that if they didn't agree to submit, then everyone would fight it out. Once the fight started, it would be a life-and-death battle. Originally, the assassins in the human world would have a 50% chance of winning against the 7 pirates. At least they would have a chance to escape unscathed. After all, assassins in the human world were best at hiding and sneaking around. If they didn't hit, they would escape thousands of miles away. However, with Jiang Tian here, their chances of winning were almost zero. They might even be in danger of being wiped out. However, he was just fooled by Jiang Tian and the others with a few words. He was really unwilling to give up the assassins in the human world that he had painstakingly built for many years. If he really did that and word got out, he would be the biggest laughingstock. Haha, the assassins in the human world really don't have the guts to compete with the Taichu Heavenly Emperor and all of you. Ji Tao pondered for a moment, then suddenly came up with an idea. He smiled and said, "Let me tell you, the assassins in the human world are all craftsmen. We've always used assassination to determine the winner. Why don't we start a killing competition? If you win, we'll worship the Taichu Heavenly Emperor. But what if you lose?" That's very simple." Hearing this, Jiang Tian let out a long laugh. With an indescribably domineering aura, he leisurely said, "If I lose, I'm willing to give up and worship you as the Heavenly Emperor of the Heavenly Court together with the 7 great bandits. That's fair." "That's too embarrassing." Ji Tao smiled and said politely. Then he said seriously, "Where do you think is suitable for assassination?" "The Aquamoon Grotto Heaven." Ji Yusha immediately shook her head after hearing Jiang Tian's words. "No. We've already alerted the enemy. The Aquamoon Grotto Heaven is now heavily guarded. If we go, we'll be killed. You're all good assassins. Ji Tao is also known as the Exterminator. Your name is well known in the ruins of deity. Shouldn't we have a difficult mode?" Jiang Tian said with a smile. "Sure." Ji Tao was speechless after hearing Jiang Tian's words. He nodded and said with a forced smile, "But who are the participants?" "All of you and me." Hearing Jiang Tian's words, everyone from the world of assassins was startled. They couldn't believe it. They had thought that Jiang Tian would lead the 7 great bandits in the world of assassins to compete with the world of assassins. In that case, they would be evenly matched. They had never thought that Jiang Tian would go alone. This was no longer confidence, it was arrogance, He's too arrogant. We have 8 soul formation cultivators in the world of assassins. Right, he's no match for us. We might not be as good as him in a face-to-face battle, but he's too inexperienced when it comes to assassination. Besides, isn't he afraid that he'll be surrounded and killed by our soul formation cultivators? Many assassins shook their heads. In their eyes, Jiang Tian was asking for trouble. He would only lose. Jiang Tian's expression didn't even change in the face of the crowd's mockery. "It's not that I, Kong Teichu, am arrogant, but I have to do this. You all know that the 6 grotto heavens are united. We'll support each other for good or ill. Once we're discovered attacking the Aquamoon Grotto Heaven, Tianmong Tianji, and the other grotto heavens will rush to help. Even the Academy, the Ruins Emperor's Palace, and Sky Palace will intervene. By then, 100 soul formation cultivators will besiege us. Although I, Kong Teichu, have the ability to escape unscathed with your methods, I'm afraid." Jiang Tian smiled mockingly. "Therefore, the 7 great bandits should go to the 100 Moon Academy, the ruins Emperor's Mausoleum, and the other grotto heavens to create the illusion that I, Kong Taichu, am on the move and distract their soul formation cultivators. That's a great plan, Taichu. Ji Tao nodded in praise, but he felt a little uncomfortable. Then let's begin. Jiang Tian glanced at Yun Zhongzi and the others leisurely and smiled. All of you carry out the second plan. Today I want to turn the ruins of immortality upside down and make everyone tremble in fear. Yes, Your Majesty. We won't let you down. Yun Zhongzi and the rest of the bandits as well as Ghost Wolf and Long Xingnan, kowtowed deeply on the ground. Then they soared into the sky and turned into black, white and even birds and beasts quickly disappearing into the sky. Ji Tao's heart skipped a beat when he saw that. Some of Kong Taichu's subordinates were formidable bandits, some were once important ministers of the ruins emperor, and the worst was the saintess of the heavenly sects. However, they followed his orders as if they were his arms. Putting everything else aside in terms of controlling his subordinates, I'm nothing compared to him. Chapter 1571. Jiang Tian asked Bai Muxue to stay. After Yun Zhongzi and the others left, Jiang Tian smiled and said, "Summon all your divine crystal masters. Call out all your semi-god realm grand cultivators. Let's go. These crystal ships are a gift to you. I'm worried that you won't be able to keep up with me if you're too slow and don't have enough stamina." Then he turned into a ray of light and dashed towards the direction of the Water Moon Grotto Heaven. Only the royal family of the Grotto Heaven could have those crystal ships. They were battle-type giant true artifacts. Even though the human world had been accumulating them for 1,000 years, there were only 2 of them. Ji Tao was a bit grateful that Jiang Tian was willing to give them to them. But after hearing Jiang Tian's last sentence, Ji Tao and the other soul formation assassins were so angry that they almost fainted and their faces turned pale. One must know that assassins were different from ordinary cultivators. They were most proficient in movement techniques and speed. This was something that they were proud of. However, at this moment, it was questioned and looked down upon by Jiang Tian. This was simply a slap to the face. "You Sha take the crystal ships. I'll go with Cultivator Taichu," Ji Tao said with a dark face. He swayed his body and followed Jiang Tian. "Right, I'm worried that I'll lose him if I'm too fast," a soul formation assassin said proudly and disdainfully. The wind was howling and the spirit chi was like rain. The entire ruins of deities was vast and boundless. Flying high in the sky, Zhou Xian looked down and saw fields and mountains, and cultivators as insignificant as ants. How big was the ruins of deities? When Jiang Tian arrived through the gate of sky-bearing, he had looked into the distance and found that this planet was 1,000 times larger than Earth. Besides, the spirit chi of the South Gate 2 stars had been gathered here through the sky chi drawing array. It was extremely dense. The sky was filled with all kinds of essence chi. Many spirit veins that looked like giant dragons were thousands of miles long. It was no different from the planets at the edge of the central galaxy. Boom! A golden ray of light tore open the sky. Not only was Jiang Tian carrying Bai Muxue, but he was also carrying Bai Muxue. In order to maintain the fastest speed, the divine disk spun like the sun in the sky. Countless amounts of true essence gathered in the Kun Ping True Seal. The Kun Ping True Seal flickered and the laws separated the space. It was like a peerless heavenly sword that was 700 miles long. It separated the heaven and earth and it traveled 100 miles in an instant. Ji Tao and the other soul formation realm assassins behind him were all shocked. Jiang Tian's speed was too terrifying. In just a short period of time, they were thrown thousands of miles away by Jiang Tian, and their divine senses could barely detect him. Moreover, endurance. Logically speaking, they could also use the laws to forcefully tear open space. But normally it could only be maintained for a short moment, unlike Jiang Tian whose laws were almost endless. In fact, Jiang Tian was also anxious. In order to reach the Water Moon Grotto Heaven as soon as possible, he had pushed the Kun Ping laws to the limit. He had just received news that the Emperor of the Ruins Palace had started to conquer the Baiming Sea, Penglai, Dragon Gate and Yingzhou. Their final strategy was to fight each other, and even the strongholds of many bandits had been affected. Those cultivators were the natives of the deity ground and immigrants from the solar system. They were people with lofty ideals who didn't want to be slaves and servants. They came from the same origin as Jiang Tian. In terms of the dimensions of the universe, they were even the same kind. There would probably be sacrifices every second. The three top cultivators, the master of the academy, the sword god and heavenly river star lord, weren't fools. They were even extremely wise. They knew Zhang Tian had taken it upon himself to restore the ancient heavenly courts, and he treated the natives of the deity ground as his own kind, so he had some feelings for them. So they were using such a method to force Zhang Tian to show up as soon as possible so that he could fight them to the death. However, Zhang Tian hadn't entered the nascent soul level yet. It would be difficult to challenge the three top soul formation realm cultivators, and his chance of winning was slim. Zhang Tian's way of fighting could only disrupt their plan and break through to the nascent soul level as soon as possible. In the meantime, the other soul formation realm cultivators of the world of assassins also received the news that Zhang Tian was going to have an assassination competition with them to determine the winner. Those cultivators also rubbed their palms. They all came from different places on Dharma artifacts or through teleportation arrays, gathering with the team. Rumble. 9 divine bodies appeared on the 10-foot-tall disc behind Zhang Tian's back. The Azure Dragon, the Winged Dragon, the Sea-calming Ice God, the Thunder Dragon. In the end, they turned into a giant Kun Peng. An adult Kun Peng was said to be able to conquer 3,000 worlds with one wing. In terms of speed, it was among the top 5 in the universe. Zhang Tian's speed was extremely fast. Every time he flashed, he was 1,000 miles away. They could barely see him. In the end, the people of the world of assassins and even the crystal ships couldn't keep up. Their Dharma power was almost used up. Zhang Tian waved his large sleeve, and as if the stars were moving, he sent them 1,000 miles away, advancing together. Half a day later, Zhang Tian had crossed 400,000 kilometers and many states, provinces and cities. He vaguely saw the outline of Water Moon heavenly abode. 400,000 kilometers was equivalent to the distance between the Earth and the Moon, but Zhang Tian had only crossed it in half a day with his body. Guys, do you want to take a break? Zhang Tian stood still and looked at Water Moon heavenly abode calmly. He glanced at the assassins of the world of humans and smiled. My friend, you've brought us all the way here. If you don't need to rest, we don't need to. Ji Tao wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and forced a smile. At this time, Ji Tianlan already admired Zhang Tian to the extreme. The assassins of the world of humans were best at speed, but they were nothing compared to Zhang Tian. But Ji Yushao was still not convinced. Movement techniques and speed were only a part of an assassination. Escaping was a skill that specialized in assassination, and that was not all. The assassins of the world of humans had also chosen to fight with the ruins of deity, just like the 7 great bandits, but they had suffered heavy losses. However, unlike the 7 great bandits who had the blood of monsters and were impulsive, the assassins of the world of humans had the blood of real humans, no different from humans on Earth. They knew how to take advantage of the situation, so they gradually formed and developed a complete set of assassination cultivation arts and skills. They would hide their energy, hide their killing intent, set up barriers and kill with one strike. They would integrate all their energy into it and kill people within 5 steps. It could be said that these techniques that focused on assassination were accumulated through the practice of countless predecessors, and they could be said to be supreme techniques. Ji Yushao believed that they might not be as good as Zhang Tian in a face-to-face battle, but when it came to assassination, Zhang Tian was definitely inferior. Zhang Tian smiled and said, "Then let's begin. Fellow Taoist Taichu, you must know that our competition is an assassination, not a simple killing. If the opponent detects it, it will count as a failure." Ji Tao reminded him. "Got it." Zhang Tian nodded. His figure flashed and he suddenly vanished on the spot, leaving Ji Tao and the others looking at each other. He disappeared completely. It's as if he broke the void and went to another world. Everyone panicked and couldn't believe it. The Water Moon heavenly abode. It was a hemispherical place with a radius of 500 miles, like a half-moon hanging in the sky. On it, there were mountains tens of thousands of feet high. In essence, Chi was like a waterfall. Clouds were rising and auspicious lights were gushing out. Many ancient beasts roared in the forest and mountains. Fierce birds flapped their wings and soared in the sky, as if it were a barbaric world. Through the strict boundary membrane, one could see palaces on the mountains, under the waterfall and hidden by the ethereal spirit fog. Some were even floating in the air. Those palaces were magnificent and emitted dazzling light. There were cranes circling around them and a black Kylan sleeping leisurely on the green stone slabs. On the mountains the words Refining Hall, Library, Treasure Vault, and Mission Hall flashed in the air. They belonged to the South Gate 1 star. The Water Moon Grotto Heaven was indeed worthy of being one of the 6 grotto heavens. Ordinary sects could establish themselves by occupying a mountain, but here a mountain was just a branch. Its aura was indeed earth-shattering. The scenery here was pleasant and it looked like an immortal's cave abode. But in fact it was already filled with killing intent. All the cultivators were on standby and ready. Since the end of the Age of Tao damage and the establishment of the Ruins Emperor's dynasty, the Ruins of Immortality had never been like this. All the cultivators in the Ruins of Immortality were affected and nervous. There was only one reason for that: Kong Teichu. Kong Teichu was too good at causing trouble. Since he started cultivating, he had killed the Crown Prince, slaughtered the Divine Emperor and destroyed the 3 guards of the Golden Crow. Now he had even killed his way to the Ruins of Immortality, destroyed the Sword Mountain Villa and surrounded the Sword Servants. Now he had shocked the Ruins Emperor's Palace and the 100 Moon Academy to the point that they were facing a great enemy. They had mobilized all the major forces in the Ruins of Immortality and the 6 grotto heavens to send out their elite troops. At that moment, all the protective formations and defensive restrictions of the Water Moon Grotto Heaven were activated. The atmosphere was solemn. Many of the mountains outside the Grotto Heaven had set up sentry posts and sound transmission formations. There were even small groups of cultivators who took to the air and prepared their weapons as if they were afraid of being ambushed. These small groups of cultivators all belonged to the Water Moon Grotto Heaven and belonged to different mountains. When they met, they looked at each other coldly, but they still cooperated well. They crisscrossed like an iron net in the air. Even a fly would find it difficult to fly through. In the past 10,000 years, Kong Teichu was probably the only person who could make the Ruins of Immortality so jittery. Say, when do you think we'll be able to catch Kong Teichu? It's hard to say. This kid is very tricky. He hides his head and shows his tail. He's too cunning. How long can he hide for? I heard that the many guards of the Ruins Emperor's Palace and the various garrisons are sweeping the area like fins. Even if he's a flea, they can still find him. At that moment, in the library of the Water Moon Grotto Heaven, a few core disciples with nascent soul cultivation were sitting in the library and discussing. As long as we find him, he's dead meat. At that moment, a white-robed young cultivator walked in and said leisurely, "Eldest senior brother." Many cultivators stood up and greeted him. The white-robed cultivator was a personal disciple. He knew the Black Wind Mystic Water technique and had received guidance from a Grotto Heaven elder. He was already at the peak of the nascent soul realm. The eldest senior brother had a cold demeanor and was handsome. He was already at the upper stage of the nascent soul realm. He checked the various Dharma arrays and restrictions in the stronghold. After confirming that everything was correct, the eldest senior brother swept his gaze across everyone and laughed coldly. Kong Teichu is clearly not strong enough. That's why he's like a coward and doesn't dare to fight head-on. Chapter 1572. But senior brother Kong Teichu has killed Divine King Xianxia. His strength is not to be underestimated. An old inner disciple in gray cupped his hands and said in a trembling voice. He was older than his senior brother and was at least 500 years old. However, the cultivation world only cared about the strong and the weak, so he was still full of fear and respect for his senior brother. He just used a sneak attack. He won't be able to win if he uses his real strength. The eldest senior brother of the book collection pavilion sat on a stone bench. He took a cup of tea from a beautiful junior sister and took a sip. Then he curled his lips in disdain as if he was looking down at an ant. He's just a cultivator from a peripheral galaxy. He's as weak as an ant or a cockroach. He can only win with tricks. Haven't you heard that Tong Yujian of the Imperial Sword Villa was also killed by him and many other bandits? The disdain on his face was extremely strong. Kong Teichu's character is obvious. He's just a clown. If I see him in person, I'll definitely cut his head off. You're right, senior brother. Senior brother's cultivation arts are profound and his power is unbelievable. In terms of real strength, Kong Teichu is definitely not as strong as him. Hearing that, everyone nodded and their confidence was boosted. Some people praised him crazily and some female cultivators looked at him with admiration. I'm just afraid that Kong Teichu will think that the Aquamoon Grotto Heaven is too powerful and won't dare to provoke us. It'll be really difficult to catch him then. The senior brother of the book collection pavilion was complacent and high-spirited. When he heard this, he shook his head and sighed. Right at this moment, a flying sword suddenly tore through the air. It did not make any sound nor did it emit any aura. The senior brother of the nascent soul level was pierced through his chest and his body collapsed. Blood and organs splashed. His nascent soul struggled to fly out, but it was caught by a black true essence hand together with the soul tablet and swallowed. You want to catch me? Don't bother, Kong Teichu is here. A cold voice suddenly sounded. If you dare to make a sound, I will crush your nascent soul immediately. Eldest senior brother's nascent soul immediately became obedient. He was terrified and his face was filled with horror. Don't kill me, senior. Kong Teichu is here. Call for help. Run. The others shouted one after another. They wanted to activate their communication magic tools and formations, but they suddenly found that they were all malfunctioning. He wanted to escape, but he discovered that a small law light barrier had already enveloped the stronghold. Everyone rushed over, but it was like a chicken egg crashing into an iron plate. Blood immediately flowed from their heads and they were sent flying by the backlash. Senior, don't kill me. This junior will absolutely not resist. I'm willing to be your servant and follow the absolute beginning celestial emperor to conquer the world. I only ask that your majesty spare my life. Led by the old cultivator, many cultivators knelt down and trembled as if they had seen a demon. Yes, in their minds, Zhang Tian was as terrifying as a demon at this moment. He was someone who even dared to kill the divine emperor Xianxia and his sword servant. Just now, Zhang Tian had silently set up an isolation barrier, approached them and killed the eldest senior brother of the library with one sword strike. That sharp sword light and that profound attainment in formations and restrictions made them not have the courage to resist at all. I should have used the vermilion bird true fire heaven blade to kill them. Not even a drop of blood is left. So that the patrolling cultivators won't find blood stains on the bodies. Be alert. Zhang Tian's face was cold and emotionless. He gave people a feeling of indifference and cruelty. Without any hesitation, he activated the vermilion bird true fire and burned the blood stains and minced flesh clean. At the same time, he also burned the divine souls of many cultivators into ashes without mercy amidst the crazy roars, terrified cries and pitiful begging. He only took away the soul tablets and left the nascent souls to control and bind with the soul devourer's divine sense. In the assassination competition between him and the human world, the final number of nascent souls or divine souls would be the winner. There was a reason for this. Almost no cultivator wore a soul tablet. Once the soul tablet was extinguished, the following assassination couldn't be carried out. Therefore, it was also very important to control the divine souls of the cultivators. After destroying the base of the library, Zhang Tian rose into the sky. In the soul devourer's divine sense, a few nascent souls were struggling madly and roaring silently. They were full of resentment and unwillingness, but they couldn't struggle at all. They couldn't even send out any spiritual waves. Even the nascent souls that had physical bodies couldn't do it. Zhang Tian's assassination was as silent as cutting vegetables. In an instant, at least 200 nascent soul cultivators were killed by Zhang Tian. There were only 300 nascent soul cultivators in the Aquamoon heavenly abode. Zhang Tian's swift assassination didn't alert anyone at all. Their nascent souls weren't destroyed and their soul tablets didn't send out any messages. The artifact refining hall was a very special mountain. It was bare and there weren't many plants. Flames were burning all day long and the ground was covered in powder. It had completely lost its Dharma power. But there is a high-level isolation barrier on the peak of the refining hall. Is there a big shot in there? Zhang Tian's body flickered as he flew over. His body was invisible and he didn't even emit any aura or mental fluctuation. The Aquamoon heavenly abode was heavily guarded at the moment. There were countless sentry posts and barriers. Cultivators were patrolling in the sky. Every step was dangerous. But to Zhang Tian, it was as easy as walking on flat ground. He circulated the heaven-deceiving mystic technique and restrained his aura. He only used the Kunpeng law to break through space. He was invisible, as though he was walking in another world. They couldn't sense him at all. In a seemingly dirty artifact refining room on the artifact refining hall's mountain, the furnace was blazing and the temperature was extremely high. It was like being under the scorching sun. The shelves were filled with artifact refining materials. The walls and tables were filled with half-completed Dharma artifacts. The barrier array was activated. Although they couldn't sense what was happening outside, it was extremely safe. A female cultivator was the concubine of the elder of imparting techniques. She was having sex with a low-level disciple of the artifact refining hall. Her snow-white skin was covered in sweat. Against the rough background there was a soul-stirring beauty. Amidst the screams, the concubine and the low-level disciple reached an extreme level of satisfaction at the same time. The concubine was very grateful to Kong Teichu for attacking the ruins of immortality. Her dead Dao partner, who had been in seclusion for 20 years and treated her like a decoration, had followed the orders of the ruins' emperor's palace and led a few disciples out to investigate. It gave her the chance to enjoy the pleasures of life. Over the past few days she had disciples serve her almost every day. Sometimes there would be 3 to 5 of them at the same time. It was extremely satisfying. It had to be said that compared to the people in the library, this pair of ill-fated lovebirds were lucky. At the very least they had enjoyed their lives before dying. The disciple, who was as stocky as a bull, got off his mistress's body and immediately felt that something was amiss. He turned back and immediately saw a man filled with killing intent in the heavily restricted room. "Fellow Taoist, don't spread the news. You can take the materials here." He jumped in fright, thinking that he had been caught red-handed. In fact, many people in the grotto heaven knew that the concubine was having an affair. However, it was different if they were caught in the act. He saw the man flick his finger with a faint smile, and a flame immediately shot out like a fire dragon. That was the last thing he saw in his life. He also swore that he had never seen such a scorching flame in his life. It was even 10,000 times hotter than the crystal flames. The concubine opened her beautiful eyes and saw her lover's body being burned to ashes. His golden core was snatched away and his body and soul were destroyed. She immediately screamed. Her scream was not as charming as before, but it was filled with fear. However, it was also the last sound she made in her life. Jiang Tian's expression was calm as he raised his hand to grab the golden core. He felt a little depressed. He had seen that there was a rather powerful restriction and thought that some important figure was hiding there. He thought that there was a nascent soul or even soul formation expert overseeing the place, so he had rushed over to kill them. He never expected that it was just 2 lovebirds. Jiang Tian scanned the surroundings with his soul-devouring divine consciousness. In the end, his divine consciousness locked onto the mountain where the alchemy hall was located. There was a half-step soul formation cultivator sitting cross-legged and cultivating. Looking at the lintel, he was the hall master of the alchemy hall. In fact, the alchemy hall was a very popular position in any grotto heaven. After all, they controlled too many resources. Generally speaking, it was controlled by the immediate family of the grotto heaven's owner. At this moment, the grotto heaven was on standby. It could be said that everyone was a soldier. However, this kid was cultivating peacefully and did not need to carry out defense and reconnaissance missions. It could be seen that this person was favored by the grotto heaven and had an extraordinary identity. I finally found a half-step soul formation cultivator. According to the agreement with Ji Tao, a half-step soul formation cultivator is equivalent to 500 foundation establishment cultivators. I'll choose you. Jiang Tian's lips curled into a cold smile. He stepped out of the restriction and flew silently toward the alchemy hall like the king of hell. Each piece was priceless. Below the cave there was a large spiritual vein. Beside it there was a spiritual herb garden and a storehouse. The overflowing spiritual qi would be gathered here through the spiritual gathering and guiding array. It was extremely extravagant to provide for one person to cultivate. Shui Qijie didn't lack pills. He was the person in charge of the alchemy hall's mountain peak. As long as he wanted it, other than the top-notch Dao pills and heaven pills that the elders and the cave master had named, he did not need to report at all. He could take it anytime, anywhere, and there was no limit. Shui Qijie had even more cultivation techniques. Ignoring the fact that the sect's library was open to him at all times, even the cultivation techniques of the other grotto heavens, or even the Grand Academy or the Ruins Emperor's Palace's Grand Academy, the elders would think of means to obtain them for him if he wished to read them. As for magical treasures, Shui Qijia's collection was also as vast as the sea. Most of them were top-grade true artifacts, and there were even 3 Dao artifacts. As for women, he was even more sick of them. As long as he needed a cauldron, the grotto heavens would find female cultivators with special physiques and suitable cultivation levels for him to toy with and devour. He had even toyed with many daughters of city lords and princesses of vassal states. Shui Qijie didn't need to worry about anything. That was the privilege of an outstanding disciple. It far exceeded that of a personal disciple. He could enjoy everything. The only thing he needed to do was cultivate, and cultivate. With Jiang Tian's spiritual consciousness, he soon discovered that there was a hidden cave in the depths of the Alchemy Hall's mountain peak. The cultivator cultivating in seclusion in the cave was his target. That person was the second half-step soul formation cultivator that Jiang Tian met, other than Elder Lin Yu in the Water Moon Grotto Heavens. That person was dressed in a disciple's robe, but his cultivation level was higher than Lin Yu's. He was infinitely close to the soul formation realm. His killing intent in particular was not weak at all. Clearly he was a cruel and bloodthirsty person. His hands were stained with blood. This kid's demonic nature is comparable to Ming Rui's that I met in the West Earth world. I can use him to strengthen my soul devourer's spiritual consciousness. Jiang Tian was overjoyed. His soul devourer's consciousness was originally a part of the demon body of purgatory. In order to turn into a demon, one had to have a ferocious nature. The stronger the ferocious nature, the stronger the soul devourer's consciousness. If one were to say that Ming Rui had created the bloodbath body metamorphosis technique after devouring her own child, it was because of love, wanting to change the fate of West Earth's cultivators. Then this Shui Qijie had no scruples for his own selfish interests. He had truly reached the state of having no Tao in his heart, no rules and no restrictions. He was the only one who reigned supreme, slaughtering everything and no one else but himself. Give that kid 100 years and he'll definitely become a giant in the ruins of immortality and rule over the entire Aquamoon Heavenly Cave. You don't have time. Jiang Tian's eyes lit up. With a sway of his body he used the law of the Kunpeng and broke through the space. He crashed into the mountain and disappeared instantly. The moment Jiang Tian broke the seal of the cave, Shui Qijie suddenly felt a sense of danger. He suddenly opened his eyes and disappeared on the spot. The place where he was just standing was suddenly engulfed in flames, burning the futon into ashes. Even the array patterns on the walls were destroyed. When Shui Qijie reappeared, he was already in the air. The law of fire surrounded him and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. He didn't hide his energy at all and quickly reached the half-step soul formation stage. He stared at Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian stared at Shui Qijie with a faint smile. This kid had just dodged his vermilion bird flaming blade. Even though it was just a casual attack, his intuition and reaction speed were not bad. Shui Qijie didn't act rashly. He only scanned with his divine sense and found that the seals that could resist soul formation stage cultivators weren't destroyed. However, Jiang Tian had already entered. Immediately, a chill ran down his spine and he didn't say anything. His movement technique was extremely fast, like a flickering light or passing shadow. At the very least he could compete with Ghost Wolf. However, Jiang Tian reacted even faster. As soon as Shui Qijie moved, the 10-foot divine plate on his back flashed and the law of ice was activated. A forbidden area. How can it be so powerful? I'm a half-step soul formation stage cultivator. I can break through the forbidden area of a normal nascent soul stage cultivator. Shui Qijie's eyes were filled with fear and panic. The hairs on his body were about to explode. He felt as if he was being suppressed by 10,000 mountains from all directions. He couldn't even move a finger. At the moment his body couldn't move, but his divine soul was normal and he could still use his Dharma power. Suddenly, all the true artifacts and the 3 Dao artifacts given by the Grotto Heavens flew out, trying to break through the seal. However, those true treasures and Dao treasures only flew half a meter before they were frozen in place like dead snakes. The divine soul imprints on them were instantly destroyed, giving him a headache. Luckily his head didn't explode. What a powerful soul energy. At this moment Shui Qijie was desperate and terrified. Cold sweat ran down his forehead and he begged. Senior, I'm willing to accept you as my master and sign a divine soul contract with you. I'll never betray you and I'll be loyal to you. Zhang Tian walked over leisurely as if he were taking a stroll in the park. There was a look of disdain in his eyes and he said with a smile. Unfortunately I can't. I'm in a competition with an assassin. I have to kill you. In the next second, the true fire of the Red Sparrow surged out with the power of laws. The law of ice seemed to have sensed it and it slowly opened a path for the true fire of the Red Sparrow to enter. Explode. Elder Cave Master, save me. Shui Qijie didn't succeed in self-destructing and he couldn't send a message with his immortal will. He screamed as his body cracked and turned into ashes. When his nascent soul wanted to escape, it was locked down by Zhang Tian's soul swallowing immortal will and Tao Tai. It would become Zhang Tian's resource to increase his power. Why are the soul formation cultivators in the central grand hall all attacking? Jitao has been exposed. What a useless teammate. Zhang Tian's expression suddenly changed. He scanned the central hall with his immortal will. Many grand elders of the semi-god realm flew up to the sky and flew in all directions, fighting with the assassins of the mortal world. The competition had finally ended and a great battle had broken out. Chapter 1574. As a matter of fact, Ji Tao and the others were startled once the competition started. Each soul formation cultivator led an assassination team and there were 8 teams in total. They sneaked into the depths of the grotto heaven from all directions, along the mountains, bases and fortresses of the branches. However, every time they entered a base or fortress, they would find that there was no one there. The cultivators there had already been killed by Zhang Tian. The book pavilion has been destroyed. An old divine assassin entered the base and scanned with his immortal will. He immediately used a communication dharma artifact and said, such a communication dharma artifact was left behind in the ancient times and was even more subtle than immortal will. Not even a soul formation overlord could detect it. Every assassin in the world was equipped with one. Everyone in the base of the artifact refining hall is gone. Another old assassin in a black outfit also exclaimed. The sword testing peak has been destroyed. The artifact refining hall has been destroyed. All nascent soul cultivators above the Zhuowang peak have been killed. The enemy hasn't noticed. Messages came in from all directions. That's terrifying. Everyone was stunned and disbelief was written all over their faces. Ji Tao had already invaded an empty base. After receiving the news, cold sweat rolled down his face like a waterfall. Jiang Taichu's assassination skills were too powerful. Those bases were a few hundred miles away from each other and they occupied different locations. Some were even facing each other. However, Zhang Tian alone was equivalent to having countless clones. He was like an army of thousands of men and horses. All of these strongholds were wiped out by him without a sound and no one noticed. Did Kong Taichu cheat? Is someone helping him? Jiyusha couldn't believe it. It was extremely difficult to assassinate someone without being noticed. Nascent soul cultivators and golden core cultivators could self-destruct and once they did, the world would be shaken. Even if they couldn't, their divine souls would be destroyed and their golden cores or nascent souls taken away. However, once their divine souls were destroyed, their soul tablets would still send messages. If the assassin dynasty wanted to carry out continuous assassinations, they had to use an ancient Dharma artifact or a replica that specialized in capturing golden cores and nascent souls. Otherwise, they would be discovered and they wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. But even so, the chances of success were still extremely low. Usually, it would only take 3 to 5 people before it was exposed. No. Ji Tao shook his head and smiled bitterly. We've set up a base outside. If someone invades, we'll know. Then aren't we going to lose? Jiyusha's beautiful eyes widened, unwilling to accept this. She didn't know why, but she just didn't like Zhang Tian. If they submitted to Zhang Tian, they would have to hand over the great dynasty of the human world to him. If they listened to Zhang Tian's orders and spoke humbly, they would be even more displeased. Ji Tao flipped open a jade slip. With a flash of light, a map of the water moon heavenly abode appeared before everyone's eyes. Pa. Ji Tao waved his hand. The strongholds that Zhang Tian had destroyed had all become flickering red dots on the map. Everyone frowned and looked carefully. The Grand Primordium Senior swept the stronghold from the outside to the inside in a circular manner, layer by layer, plowing the courtyard and sweeping the acupoints, pushing towards the central hall. Ji Tianlan glanced at the red dots on the map and complimented from the bottom of her heart. Using this method, no one escapes. Also, it can avoid being discovered by the neighboring strongholds. In fact, this was also the situation of the strongholds of the Water Moon Heavenly Abode. With the central hall as the core and the mountains as the strongholds, they cooperated with each other and formed many blockades. The blockades formed many layers of defense. Indeed, according to our calculations, Kong Teichu has probably killed 1/3 of the nascent soul cultivators. Ji Tao's expression was grave as he stared fixedly at the map. Our chances of winning are next to none. Our assassination speed is not as fast as Kong Teichu's. The only thing we can do now is to bypass the blockade and head straight for the central Great Hall, going deep into the hinterland. Ji Yusha hurriedly said. Otherwise we won't even be able to get anything if we follow Kong Teichu. We can only watch him kill everyone and give the dynasty of the human world to someone else. No, we can't. Once we're discovered, we'll be surrounded. This is too risky. Ji Tianlan was startled and immediately tried to persuade him. Don't panic. Let me think. Ji Tao wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and was having a fierce struggle in his mind. As the king of assassins, Ji Tao had seen all kinds of situations, but he had never been as nervous as he was today. This was indeed risky, but if they didn't do it, they would lose to Kong Teichu. Father, what are you thinking about? We're not afraid even if we're discovered. After all our soul formation grand cultivators are here. We might not lose to the Water Moon Heavenly Abode even if we fight them face to face. Ji Yusha was full of arrogance, but then she was a bit worried and said, but if we lose to Kong Teichu in the assassination competition, we'll be doomed. We'll have to give up our ancestral inheritance to him and call him Heavenly Emperor in the future. We'll have to kneel down when we meet him. I feel so cowardly just thinking about it. I'm afraid that's the only way. Ji Tao was convinced. He clenched his fists and said coldly, all assassins, listen to me. The 8 assassination teams will form 3 teams. I'll lead the first one, Elder Zhao Xijing will lead the second, and Elder Wang Heiling will lead the third. We'll break into the core of the Water Moon Heavenly Abode and get in front of Kong Teichu. But everyone, please be careful. We can't let the Water Moon Heavenly Abode discover us. Yes. Hundreds of nascent soul-level assassins and 8 soul formation overlords from all directions answered after receiving the order. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. From time to time they would hide their figures in auras. From time to time they would transform into ferocious beasts and birds. Some of them would stay motionless against the mountain walls, and some would hide in the clouds and mist. They would quickly change their positions and form an assassination team. They would charge toward the core area in an orderly manner. After passing through the areas that Jiang Tian had swept, they finally found living nascent soul-level cultivators in the strongholds and fortresses. They immediately started a massacre. Like locusts passing through, they killed more than 20 people in a row. But good things didn't last forever. The cultivators in the Water Moon Heavenly Abode weren't ordinary cultivators, nor were they good-for-nothings. When they besieged the stronghold of the Long Stone Peak, a half-soul formation cultivator there noticed their energy and immediately activated the strangulation array. Under the attack of the strangulation array, Ji Tao and the others had to show up. Elder, we're under attack. The cultivators in the stronghold of the Long Stone Peak quickly sent messages and rushed out of the stronghold to fight against Ji Tao, another soul formation elder, and dozens of nascent soul-level assassins. Once the battle started, wind blew, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. Some cultivators died immediately. The hurried screams made people's hair stand on end. A dynasty of assassins has invaded the human world. A battle has begun at the Long Stone Peak. Emergency help. In a moment, all the strongholds were sending messages. Clusters of essence chi rose from the strongholds and soared into the sky like smoke signals. They formed many deity words and flashed in the sky. Everyone could see them clearly. Kill. How dare a dynasty of assassins offend the Water Moon Heavenly Abode? Do you want to die? Immediately, the cultivators of the Grotto Heaven realm shouted angrily. They either rode on lights, flying swords, flying chariots, or savage beasts, and charged towards Ji Tao and the others at lightning speed. There were even giant crystal battleships in the sky, flashing and flying towards the long stone peak. The army of cultivators surrounded Ji Tao and the others. In the end, some cultivators even went to the strongholds to check, only to find that there was no one there. Almost 200 nascent soul-level cultivators had been killed right under their noses. Master Elder. Oh no, the strongholds outside have been destroyed. The Book Pavilion, the Artifact Hall. Nascent soul-level cultivators have all been killed. The soul tablet of Xianxia, who's in the secret chamber of the alchemy hall, didn't respond. He might have been killed. They were shocked. That was an extremely heavy loss, so they quickly reported the news to the Central Grand Hall. Chapter 1575. How dare you? How dare you kill our potential divine lords? When they heard that Xianxia had been killed, the sect master of the Water Moon Grotto Heaven, Divine Lord Xian Nu, and many other elders couldn't believe it. Waves of earth-shattering primordial chi fluctuations soared into the sky from the central main hall, transforming into a monstrous pressure that seemed to want to crush the myriad worlds. A debt of blood must be paid in blood. Today the world will be erased from the world of assassins. Even the two grand elders who were cultivating in seclusion were alerted. They broke out of seclusion with hatred in their hearts. Xianxia was a potential soul formation cultivator that they had spent a lot of effort to cultivate. They had poured countless resources into him. In other words, the entire Water Moon Grotto Heaven had been operating around him for the past 100 years. Besides, Xianxia was also extremely talented. He had a strong mind and worked hard to cultivate. He had already reached the half-soul formation level and was only a step away from the real soul formation level. If he had succeeded, the Water Moon Grotto Heaven would have had a successor and would have been able to prosper for hundreds or thousands of years. And yet he had been killed that day. The senior members of the Grotto Heaven felt as if a knife had been stabbed in their hearts. They couldn't accept it and hated the world of humans to the extreme. That was why so many soul formation cultivators flew out of the central hall. After Jiang Tian killed Xianxia, he noticed that the central hall was shaking. He immediately flashed through the void and appeared out of thin air. Jiang Tian took Bai Muxue to an area under a mountain covered with dense forests. Jiang Tian released his wood energy and merged with the plants around so he wouldn't be discovered. Master, the world of humans is surrounded. What should we do? Should we help them? Bai Muxue asked. We have to. After all, there are a few talents who can help me recover the deity ground. But not now. Jiang Tian said casually with a smile. I asked you to calculate the location of the wind-rain banner. How did it go? Bai Muxue was speechless and said, I've done some calculations. It should be at the Yunwu Peak. Jiang Tian was too lazy. In fact, his deductions and mathematical attainments were definitely at the peak of perfection. However, as long as it was something that Bai Muxue could do, he would definitely not do it himself. It was as if he was a hands-off boss. Ever since they entered the heavenly abode, Jiang Tian had assigned this task to Bai Muxue. He told her to deduce the location of the wind and rain banner based on the branches of the hall, the topography of the mountains and rivers, as well as the spiritual energy fluctuations of the various restrictions. But only in this way will I be of some use to him. Only then will he bring me along. When Bai Muxue thought of this, her beautiful eyes turned soft, revealing a trace of infatuation. There were no weaklings by Jiang Tian's side, and he didn't want trash to burden him. Her cultivation was far inferior to Ghost Wolf, Long Xingnan, and the others. If she wanted to stay by Jiang Tian's side, she had to be a good external brain. Cloud Mist Peak? Jiang Tian's face changed slightly when he heard this. He scanned with his divine sense and said softly, the duties there are unclear. There are no halls, but there are a few powerful nascent soul heavenly lords there. On the surface, it is the place where the two grand elders cultivate in seclusion. Now it seems that it is where the supreme treasure of the sect is kept. World of Men can stall those soul formation cultivators so that we can get the treasure. It doesn't matter if we destroy the Aquamoon heavenly abode or not. Master is so cunning. Such a plan to kill two birds with one stone is brilliant. Bai Muxue's charm was peerless and her temperament was otherworldly. Her beautiful eyes were filled with admiration. At this moment she finally understood. Jiang Tian and World of Men competed in assassination for two reasons. First, he wanted to win the competition and take the opportunity to recruit them. Second, he wanted to use them to stall the cultivators of the Aquamoon Heavenly Abode so that he could get the treasure himself. The reason why Zhang Tian didn't help them now was not only to let World of Men stall them, but also to let World of Men suffer. In this way, Zhang Tian would be like a divine warrior and save them. Only then would they be grateful. And all of these schemes, in fact, had happened in the few moments when Zhang Tian and Jitao had met. Swish. Zhang Tian waved his sleeves and soared into the air. He entered the dimensional space, appearing and disappearing as he flew towards the Cloud Mist Peak. The Cloud Mist Peak was filled with water vapor and white clouds. This mountain wasn't big, only a few thousand feet tall. Compared to the surrounding mountains, it was inconspicuous. But the cultivators of the Aquamoon Heavenly Abode knew that this was the forbidden area of the sect. There were countless Dharma arrays and Dharma powers. Other than the disciples, only the Grand Elders and the sect master were allowed to get close. Once the others got close, they would be severely punished or even killed on the spot. On a cliff on the Cloud Mist Peak, under the dense forest, 5 powerful cultivators were frowning as they scanned the battle near the central hall with their divine senses. Senior Brother Qi, assassins from World of Men have invaded. Also, there are 7 or 8 soul formation experts. Should we go and help? A Foundation establishment cultivator with long and narrow eyes in a purple robe looked at a black-robed cultivator in the lead and asked worriedly. The so-called senior brother was an unparalleled elder. He was of high seniority and was sect master Xian Yu's senior brother. His strength was also impressive, being at the half-step soul formation realm. In fact, these cultivators were all of high seniority. Their strength was at the peak of the nascent soul realm or half-step soul formation realm. If they were outside, they would be famous. Even if they were in the ruins Emperor's palace, they could be guards or generals. The black-robed Elder Qi was indifferent when he heard that. He shook his head gently. Elder Pan, you are a new elder and have just joined the mission of guarding the Cloud Mist Peak. There are some rules that you don't know. Our duty is to guard the wind rain flag on this peak. We don't have to care about other matters. To put it bluntly, even if Sect Master Shen Yu is killed on the spot, we are not allowed to leave this peak. There is an ancient saying in the Grotto Heaven. As long as the wind rain flag exists, the Grotto Heaven will exist. If the wind rain flag is lost, the Grotto Heaven will only exist in name. You must always remember this. I understand. Hearing this, Elder Pan's face was filled with shock. However, since the wind rain flag is so important, why don't the 2 Grand Elders and Sect Master carry it with you? You have to be able to carry it. Elder Qi's expression was slightly stern as he spoke slowly. The wind rain flag is known as a quasi-sage weapon. It comes from the ancient heavenly court and is one of the supreme treasures of the previous dynasty. It is extremely heavy and has immense dermic powers. Only legendary void reversion and Dao integration cultivators can wield it at will. As for soul formation cultivators, they have to put in a lot of effort to wield it. For example, for a divinity transformation stage cultivator, such a treasure is like a mortal trying to lift a giant rock. It's fine if they try their best to lift it and smash it, but how can they carry it with them day and night? This treasure is really impressive. Elder Pan was shocked when he heard that. Yes. Do you know that after becoming an elder, the 7 heroes have to guard this place for 100 years if they want to become the owner of the Grotto Heaven? Elder Qi said with deep emotion. Guarding this place is a very important responsibility. They can't leave even a step. It's like sitting in a death prison. It's very boring. A smile appeared on his face. However, there is also great fortune. They will be nourished by the dermic powers that occasionally overflow from the wind rain flag. It will be very beneficial for the improvement of water-type cultivation techniques. I believe that by the time we finish guarding this place, we will have reached the true soul formation realm. I see. Thank you for your advice, Elder Pan. Elder Pan was still a little emotional after receiving the mission. Now he was overjoyed when he heard that. Moreover, there are 3 layers of God-level restrictions guarding this place. It's very easy for us, Elder Pan said with a smile. Suddenly, Elder Qi's expression changed. He shouted coldly, "Who is it? Stop right there. The Water Moon Grotto Heaven is a forbidden area. You are not allowed to set foot in it." Elder Qi yelled. However, the black-robed man did not stop. He passed through more than a dozen restrictions and array formations at lightning speed. He was shocked when he saw that. Chapter 1576. The arrays outside were also at the nascent soul level, which meant that it was impossible for nascent soul heavenly lords to pass through them. They would be crushed to pieces by the earth, fire, wind, thunder, and the ice arrows. However, this kid seemed to have entered through the void, and he instantly broke through the loopholes of the various grand formations and restrictions, and he fluttered through them like a butterfly. Elder Qi immediately determined that this person was absolutely no small matter. He's probably from the Assassin dynasty. How dare he steal our treasures? Kill him. Everyone's expression changed greatly and they all attacked at once. Elder Qi patted his storage bag and a bracelet-like magic tool appeared in a flash. The bracelet was an inch large and there were flowers, birds, insects, fish, ancient people, deities and divine beasts carved on it. It was extremely exquisite and was filled with an ancient energy. It was an ancient Tao artifact from the heavenly courts. It was indeed extraordinary. 5-element bracelet. The bracelet grew bigger with the wind. It contained the power of the 5 elements and was surrounded by the Kuei water. The aura of the earth veins fluctuated. The ancient trees and the golden light intertwined. It could easily kill a half-divine transformation realm cultivator. Crimson rainbow ribbon. Elder Pan also took out a red ribbon. This long silk was also a Tao artifact. It contained surging blood qi and an extremely heavy baleful aura. It drank blood and seized souls. Contained the power of laws and fragments of the great Tao. It was like a rainbow piercing through the sun as it wrapped around the black-clothed man. The other elder-level powerhouses also made their moves. In an instant, numerous laws, true essence and Tao artifacts struck down towards Jiang Tian from all directions. Some flickered with black light, some ghastly soared qi, some mountains soared through the sky and some flames refined the heavens. At first, even a soul formation cultivator in the human world wouldn't be able to withstand the attacks of 5 half-soul formation cultivators. But unexpectedly, the figure of the black-clothed youth flashed, and he suddenly disappeared from the heavy attacks, as if he had escaped into another world. Where is he? Elder Qi took back the 5-element bracelet and scanned with his immortal will. Suddenly, a drop of sweat rolled down his forehead. Bread out. Bread out. Elder Qi urged. He could feel that the black-clothed man was already on top of the cliff and was very close to him. However, even with his powerful divine sense, he was unable to sense the exact location and lock onto it. This black-clothed man was formless and traceless, without any aura or mana fluctuations. His sense of danger was just an intuition that he had developed through years of killing. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the void and the black-robed man stepped out. His face was as cold as iron and without saying a word, he struck out with his palm. This palm strike was like a Buddha slapping down the 5-finger mountain. The giant golden palm crushed the void. It was formed from countless laws intertwined with true essence. It was as heavy as Mount Tai. Metal laws. Elder Qi was shocked and took out the 5 elements bracelet again. The 5-element bracelet spun in the air and grew to the size of a millstone. Multicolored light bloomed as the 5 types of laws revolved in an attempt to resist. A loud bang was heard. The 5 elements bracelet exploded. Elder Qi gave a miserable howl and sprawled on the ground like a toad. His corporeal body sank deep into the ground and exploded from the pressure. Countless sparkling and translucent broken bones and organs flew everywhere. Next, his spirit embryo exploded as well. Even his nascent soul was suppressed and couldn't break free. Elder Pan and the other 3 elders were shocked. They attacked the black-clothed young man together, using all sorts of laws and Tao artifacts. That person retreated lightly and entered the crack in the void again. All the attacks missed. The next moment, that person appeared in a corner again. He held a green golden lotus and brushed it gently. Countless golden lotus petals flew up and down, sweeping out with a clanging sound. Blood stained the sky. Elder Pan and the other 3 half-step soul formation cultivators couldn't resist at all. Their corporeal bodies were torn apart, their spirit embryos were severely injured, and even their nascent souls were destroyed. However, their nascent souls were swallowed by the black-clothed man's black vortex in an instant. They didn't even have time to explode. Who are you? How can there be such a powerful nascent soul in this world? How can you suppress us? Elder Qi's nascent soul gritted his teeth and was filled with hatred. Under the pressure of the golden palm, it was faintly visible and almost dissipated. Who said I'm a nascent soul? I just formed my nascent soul. Besides, I'm not from the assassin dynasty. Jiang Tian waved his hand and set up a restriction that blocked out divine sense. He stood there lazily and scanned the divine level array at the entrance of the cave with his divine sense. Nascent soul. A nascent soul cultivator. A look of disbelief appeared on Elder Qi's nascent soul's face, and he felt extremely aggrieved and uncomfortable at the same time. The 5 elders of the Water-Moon Heavenly Abode were all half-step soul formation cultivators. But they were killed by a mere nascent soul cultivator. It would be a laughing stock if people knew about it. If you're not from the assassin dynasty, then the Water-Moon Heavenly Abode has no enmity with you. Why are you so ruthless? Elder Qi's nascent soul asked in confusion. He saw a glimmer of hope. If there was no deep hatred between them, maybe the other party would let him go. I want to take the wind-rain flag. You stopped me, so of course I have to kill you. Jiang Tian acted as if it was a matter of course. Even Tu Fei and the others would have to admit defeat if they saw him like that. You want to take the wind-rain flag? Elder Qi's nascent soul was shocked at first. Then he laughed and said sarcastically, "Ha, you can't take it. Ah, you won't be able to take it away. This treasure is locked by 3 powerful restrictive spells, which were modified from the ancient times. The first one is the Wondrous Restriction, the second one is the Mystic Skeleton Divine Formation, and the third one is the Absolute Restriction of the Void. Even if you're a soul formation cultivator, you won't be able to break it if no one disturbs you for 10 to 15 days. Indeed. Jiang Tian scanned with his divine sense and heaved a sigh. The Wondrous Divine Prohibition has infinite changes. The array formation is constantly changing. Even if a soul formation stage cultivator tries to probe it with their divine sense, it will be blocked. It will take at least half a year to find the loopholes. The Mystic Skeleton Divine Array was made with the bones of ancient deities and beasts. It can block all kinds of attacks. Even a soul formation overlord's attack would be useless. It would take at least 10 days to break it. The Absolute Void Restriction is a bit like a dimensional barrier, but it's also an array to disturb and guide the dimension. Apart from isolation, its most important function is teleportation. Even if you break the Mystic Skeleton Divine Array, you would be teleported a few million miles away or even deep into the universe. That would be terrible. Elder Qi's nascent soul was stunned and couldn't believe it. He had also heard about the wonders of the Triple Divine Restriction Divine Formation from the 2 Grand Elders. However, the 3 divine restrictions had always been the top secret of the sect. No one else knew about it. But this kid, just by standing here for a few seconds and scanning the area with his divine sense, he was able to see the clues. His attainments in formations and restrictions were truly terrifying. Since you know that the restrictions are hard to break, why don't you run away? Let's see if you can still run after the Grotto Heaven destroys the assassins. Elder Qi's nascent soul said in a threatening tone. As long as you don't kill me, I won't choose to detonate my nascent soul. I can form a divine soul contract with you and you can run away without telling them. Hard to break the restrictions? That's for others, but for me that might not be the case. Jiang Tian reached out with his right hand and the sky-severing sword appeared in his hand. He shook his head and smiled. Also, I won't run away. I'm going to wipe out the entire Grotto Heaven later. Do you think you can break these 3 formations with just a lousy sword? Who do you think you are? You want to wipe out the entire Grotto Heaven? Elder Qi's nascent soul laughed loudly with a mocking expression on its face. It was as if Jiang Tian was an ant that didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Chapter 1577. The Absolute Heaven Sword indeed looked ordinary. It was dull and did not have any Dharma power fluctuations. In Elder Qi's eyes, it was just an ordinary Dharma artifact. Jiang Tian didn't pay any attention to him. He just activated his cultivation technique. A 9-meter-long divine disc suddenly appeared behind him. It was as if a river of stars was revolving around it, and it emitted a dazzling light. In the next moment, Jiang Tian made a hand seal and the Thunder Centipede, Earth Dragon, Blackwater Green Dragon, Kun Peng and Vermilion Bird True Seals appeared. The power of the 9 types of laws and even the Soul Devourer's mind energy surged out and gathered in the Absolute Heaven Sword. Boom! The Absolute Heaven Sword suddenly emitted a monstrous aura, and its aura rose steadily. It was as if it could cut through the heavens and traverse 10,000 worlds. That sharp sword gleam pierced through the Gung Metal Law giant palm, leaving marks on it. Clanging sounds rang out. What a terrifying sword! Qi. Elder Qi's nascent soul was affected and was instantly pierced through. It almost dissipated in an instant and he screamed in pain. Break! Jiang Tian held the sword with both hands and slashed it down as if it was splitting Mount Hua. Rumble! Boom! Wherever the sword slashed, rays of light shot into the sky. The world was in chaos as if the sun and moon were upside down. Thunder exploded and the space shattered. There was an ear-piercing roar that grew louder and louder. It was as if ghosts were crying and wolves were howling. Rumble! The ground trembled and a huge crack appeared. The 1,000-foot Yunwu peak was instantly split into 2. Then the 3 seals and formations shattered one by one. Terrifying waves of air shot up into the sky. Huge rocks pierced through the sky and shot in all directions. Terrifying waves of mana swept through the area like a hurricane, destroying everything in its path. He can break the seal by force. Save me! Elder Qi's nascent soul, along with the Gengjin giant palm that was suppressing him, was instantly torn to shreds amid cries of shock and indignation. Hundreds of miles of clouds were rolling as thunderbolts were shuttling back and forth between the layers of clouds. The entire cave was shaking and all kinds of energies and powers were sweeping across the area. The barrier was affected by the shockwaves and it shook rapidly. The scenery outside was distorted as if it was about to be torn apart. At this moment, the cultivators of the world of mortals and the Water Moon Heavenly Cave all turned their heads to look in the direction of Cloud Mist Peak. At this moment, the battle between the Aquamoon Heavenly Cave and the world of man had reached its climax. On the side of the heavenly abode, 3 grand elders of the divinity transformation realm and many nascent soul realm cultivators were dispatched to surround and annihilate the invaders from the mortal world's assassin dynasty. The assassin dynasty had lost 2 semi-god realm warriors and 3 were severely wounded. They were forced to retreat, unable to fight back at all. In the sky above the central main hall, Divine Lord Xianxu's long robe fluttered in the wind as he stepped on the void. He was surrounded by the water precepts and the fragments of the Great Path. His divine body was emitting a bright light, like the sun in the sky, crushing all realms. He was supervising the battle with a cold face. The 2 experienced grand elders of the soul formation realm next to him looked calm and smiled disdainfully, as if they were looking at the assassins in the world like ants. Even if there were many semi-god realm warriors, they wouldn't necessarily win. It also depended on their strength. Sometimes, one semi-god realm warrior could fight against 2 or 3 of them. The Aquamoon Heavenly Cave was too powerful. The 3 grand elders of the soul formation realm who were sent out were all people with unparalleled divine powers. Every move they made resonated with the Great Path and affected the power of the Grotto Heaven. They could completely suppress the semi-god realm and nascent soul realm warriors of the human world. In fact, Divine Lord Xianxu and the 2 grand elders were only there. They didn't plan to fight at all. The 3 of them didn't even pay much attention to the battle. Instead, they were communicating with their immortal consciousnesses, discussing the great changes in the ruins of deity and Kong Techu. Xianxu, the ruins emperor's palace, ordered the 3 of us to attack together with the wind and rain banner to kill Kong Techu. What do you think? The grand elder on the left, Divine Lord Su Shao, asked in a deep voice. His white beard and white hair were crystal clear. He had white hair and a youthful face. He wore a cloud-patterned Taoist robe embroidered with wind and rain patterns. He looked like an immortal, otherworldly. He was the holder of the wind and rain banner. He had a high position and was powerful. He was also Divine Lord Xianxu's uncle master. Even the sect leader had to be respectful to him. Then what's there to talk about? On the right, Purple Lightning Lord was hot-tempered. His face was dark as he snorted. He said with a sullen face, "This Kong Techu is just an ant from a remote planet. But he's extremely vicious, stirring up a storm of blood time and time again. He deserves to be killed." Divine Lord Su Shao glanced at him and said casually, "This Kong Techu might come from a humble background, but he's not easy to deal with. Divine Emperor Hanshi was killed and Tong Yujian was wiped out by him. Moreover, he's now working with the 7 bandits. Now that he has the Gate of Heaven influence, can't he run if he can't beat us? Divine Lord Purple Lightning was speechless for a moment. He flung his sleeves angrily and said, "But we can't disobey the orders of the Ruins Emperor's palace, right? Even if we go up against Kong Techu, we're still cannon fodder. If the wind and rain flag falls into the hands of the Ruins Emperor's palace, our grotto heaven heh." Divine Lord Su Xiao was clearly rather passive about the matter of killing Kong Techu. He was considering the problem of the grotto heaven's survival. After figuring out the crux of the matter, the corner of Divine Lord Xian Yu's eyes twitched. Suddenly he said, "Can we use today's battle as an excuse to say that we were injured in the process of besieging the human world?" Divine Lord Su Xiao did not comment. He had a faint smile and no one knew what he was thinking. "In my opinion, Senior Brother Su, you don't have to be so nervous. So what if Kong Techu has the 7 bandits? They're just a motley crew of remnants of the previous dynasty. They're all grave diggers, bandits who rob and perverts who pillage everywhere." Divine Lord Purple Lightning shouted coldly. "The ruins of immortality is vast and there are countless cultivators. The giant cities are connected and the 6 grotto heavens are floating in the sky. There are hundreds of semi-god realm cultivators. If we join forces, we can exhaust Kong Techu to death. No matter how strong he is, can he kill hundreds of semi-god realm cultivators? What's more, there are 3 unparalleled giants such as the Headmaster and the Sword God. I also think that if Kong Techu really fights against the strong cultivators of the ruins of immortality, he will probably be crushed into powder." Divine Lord Xian Yu was mocking with disdain. In the direction of the cloud mist peak, a thunderous sound came. The rolling thunder exploded and the rocks flew into the sky. The entire cloud mist peak was split into 2 parts. His face suddenly changed and a pair of sword-like eyebrows stood up angrily. He said coldly, "Who dares to disturb the forbidden area of my sect? The human world? Oh no. That person has already broken the restriction and got the wind and rain flag. Stop him." Su Xiao pinched his fingers as if he was sensing something. Suddenly his face changed greatly. With a fierce look in his eyes, he flew in the direction of the cloud mist peak. "All cultivators, listen to my order. Use the array to restrain the human world killer. Don't be in a hurry to kill him. Surround the thief." Divine Lord Xian Yu also shouted majestically. The corners of his eyes were trembling, full of anger. "Don't let him escape. The wind and rain flag has been stolen." In fact, all the cultivators of the grotto heavens were shocked. They hurried over, thinking that Jiang Tian would take the opportunity to escape. After all, the Water Moon Grotto Heaven was not that easy to shake. Stealing treasures here was courting death. Even the headmaster and the other giants did not want to offend him easily. They mainly wanted to rope him in and make use of him. At this time, although Ji Yusha, who was surrounded, did not hurt her spiritual embryo, she was covered in blood and was seriously injured in many places. She was still very miserable. Even Ji Tao and the other semi-god realm cultivators were mostly injured. Their eyes were full of despair and anxiety. Their attack magic weapons were almost empty, and all kinds of defensive magic clothes and magic weapons were cracked and dim. Even if Divine Lord Xian Yu sent a large number of cultivators to chase after Jiang Tian, it would still be difficult for them to escape. They were in the depths of the grotto heaven, surrounded by cultivators and sealed by restrictions. It was fine if they were not discovered. Once they were discovered, they would be like turtles in a jar. At this time, sensing the great changes on the cloud mist peak, Jiyusha could not help but be flustered and exasperated. She cursed, "Kong Techu is so cunning. He deliberately started the assassination competition. In fact, he just used us as cannon fodder to attract the firepower. He went to steal the treasures himself. Impossible. Kong Techu is not that kind of person. Otherwise, why would the 7 great bandits follow him?" Ji Tianlong was unwilling to believe it. "Tianlong, you are too naive. Cultivators are all cunning and despicable. This Kong Techu rose from the wilderness. If he did not rely on these methods, how could he suddenly rise to the top? I'm afraid he is one of the best among them." Ji Tao's heart was filled with depression and grief. He was actually tricked by someone. He also despised Jiang Tian to the extreme. Sigh, we shouldn't have agreed to this assassination competition. If we don't compete with him, what can he do to us? This time we have suffered heavy losses. He stole the treasures and left with a lot of money. We have been playing with eagles all our lives, but in the end we were pecked in the eye by a small family sparrow. This Kang Teichu is really despicable and sinister to the extreme. Panlon, the reason why he saved you was for this moment to make us lower our guard. His plan is really far-reaching. The other assassin tycoons were also furious. They tried their best to resist as they cursed. Senior Taichu is actually that kind of person. Ji Tianlan's face was full of disappointment. Her eyes were in a daze. Suddenly, a flying sword attacked her nascent soul. This flying sword was an upper-grade true artifact. It was extremely fast and surrounded by wind and thunder. Ji Tianlan came back to her senses and wanted to dodge again, but it was too late. She could not help but reveal a look of despair and fear. Suddenly, a golden finger light crossed the void. With a clang, the flying sword broke, and the nascent soul cultivator who used the sword was shaken and staggered back. Everyone looked up at the direction where the finger light came from. They saw a black-robed young man walking over unhurriedly while fiddling with a transparent flag that rippled like water. Kang Teichu! Everyone exclaimed. At that moment, the ruins' emperor's palace had already issued a kill order. Jiang Tian's appearance had been plastered all over the major cities and sections. Everyone recognized him immediately when Jiang Tian showed his true face. Thank you, Senior Taichu. Jianlan was stunned for a moment before bowing deeply with a face full of gratitude. He didn't leave. Everyone was shocked. Ji Tao and the others could not believe it. Initially they thought that Jiang Tian would definitely flee after snatching the treasures, unwilling to take the risk. After all, this place was too dangerous. Kangti. Many cultivators of the Aquamoon Grotto Heaven revealed looks of fear and nervousness. They quickly arranged themselves into battle formations as though they were facing a great enemy. Him. Not only them, even the two grand elders Sun Shao and Purple Lightning, as well as the sect master, Divine Lord Xian Nu, looked solemn. They stared at Jiang Tian and scanned him with their divine senses. They did not expect that Jiang Tian would suddenly come here to kill and snatch the treasures. He even seemed to have joined forces with the mortal world. What a treasure! So it's the Heavenly One water. Although it's not an immortal material, it's extremely rare and can be considered a quasi-immortal material. Jiang Tian played with the exquisite little flag and could not put it down. His eyes were filled with joy as though he was a thief who had won. Chapter 1578. The first heavenly water was the original water of the world. It contained the essence of water and was much more powerful than the Kuei water essence, mystic water and heavenly marrow drop. It was a liquid, but it was solid. It shone brightly and had the power to create everything. One was like a river and the other was like an ocean. The water-type spirit qi it contained was as vast as the ocean. Countless fragments of the great Tao of water floated and could push Jiang Tian's mystic water green dragon golden core to the nascent soul level. So far, Jiang Tian had gathered all the materials he needed to form a chaotic divine soul. Because the cauldron of myriad origin was too powerful and was a chaotic material, Jiang Tian didn't need to find other earth-type materials. Jiang Tian walked over step by step as if he was taking a stroll in the park. He lowered his head and played with the wind and rain flag as if he had entered a place where there was no one around. Everyone's eyes followed him. At that moment, the two sides had stopped fighting and everyone's hearts were in their throats. The vast water moon grotto heaven was silent and even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Kang Teichu, put down our grotto heaven treasure. Purple Lightning Divine Lord's eyes twitched and he shouted angrily. Instantly lightning surged and clouds rolled. Everything within a radius of 100 miles trembled. It was as if the great Tao had reacted to him, making him seem like a god. His divine might suppressed Jiang Tian like raging waves. Although the power was targeted at Jiang Tian, many cultivators couldn't withstand it and were scared out of their wits. Why should I put it down? In the face of Purple Lightning Divine Lord's peerless power, Jiang Tian was as calm as a spring breeze. He didn't even lift the corner of his clothes. That's our grotto heaven treasure. It doesn't belong to you. Of course you have to return it. Purple Lightning God Monarch's eyes flashed with lightning and anger. Jiang Tian shook his head and asked, I took it with my own abilities. Why should I return it? Purple Lightning Divine Lord was slightly stunned. He blushed and didn't know what to say. In the cultivation world it was very common to kill and steal. Perhaps it was because the Water Moon Paradise was too strong, and they were always robbing others. This was the first time they had been robbed, so the Purple Lightning Lord was furious and could not accept it. Further back, the Wind Rain flag originally belonged to the ancient Heavenly Court, but it eventually fell into the hands of the Aquamoon Heavenly Abode. However, the descendants of the ancient Celestial Court were still around. Why would they ever think of repaying them? Sir God Sun Shao smiled and said calmly, Sir God Tai Chu, you have an interesting way of talking. The Purple Lightning Lord snorted and said angrily, He dares to bully our Water Moon Heavenly Grotto. We should show him how powerful we are. Divine Lord Xian Nu hurriedly stopped him and said softly, Martial Uncle, if we really fight we may not win. Maybe the 7 bandits are also in the dark. On top of that, the assassin dynasty of the human realm. Then Sir God Sun Shao took a step forward and said leisurely, Fellow Grand Primordium, return the Wind Rain flag to us and we'll pretend that you never came. You can easily retreat. What else? Jiang Tian raised his eyebrows. The few semi-god realm warriors of the Water Moon Heavenly Abode might not be able to stop fellow Grand Primordium. However, what if the other 5 heavenly abodes or even the Ruins Emperor Palace, 100 Moon Academy and Sky Palace all come? Sir God Sun Shao said calmly. Instantly, everyone understood what Sir God Sun Shao meant. He didn't want to fight with Jiang Tian. He only wanted to leave the Wind Rain flag behind. His bargaining chip was that if Jiang Tian was unwilling to leave the Wind Rain flag behind, he would inform the other forces to besiege Jiang Tian. To be honest, with my current power I can fight 10 semi-god realm warriors. I don't have much confidence in fighting dozens or hundreds of them. Jiang Tian said honestly. The people of the Water Moon Heavenly Abode were furious and they gritted their teeth. This man was so arrogant. He dared to say that he could fight 10 semi-god realm warriors. Who gave him such courage? It seems that although fellow Grand Primordium seems to be arrogant, he knows himself very well. Sir God Sun Shao praised from the bottom of his heart. Then he changed the topic and said calmly, The Water Moon Heavenly Abode may be weak, but if we fight with all our might, we can at least stall you for the time it takes for 3 incense sticks to burn. During that time, the 100 semi-god realm warriors can use the teleportation formation to arrive. So you have no other choice. You can only leave the flag behind and leave calmly. I know myself well, but you're too confident. Jiang Tian smiled and said, I can guarantee you that before I kill all of you, none of the other semi-god realm warriors will arrive. Why? Sir God Sun Shao smiled and said, Can the 7 bandits kill them? You can't. The 7 bandits don't have to kill them. They have to kill the 7 bandits. Jiang Tian said with a smile. What do you mean? Everyone was confused. Jiang Tian chuckled and said, You'll know the reason soon. Then the communication jade tablet at Sir God Xian Nu's waist suddenly rang. His face changed and he said, The Ruins Emperor's palace ordered us to come and help. Something big has happened. The heroes of the 7 bandits had already spread out. According to the plan, they split up to sweep the area. Compared to the east where the weather was warm and the rain was hazy, the north was much more bleak. Not a single blade of grass grew and snow covered thousands of miles. There were no birds and no traces of humans. A team of a few hundred people appeared in the mountain range. They were of all shapes and sizes, but there were no cultivators below the nascent soul realm. It was a very capable team. Brother Yinglong, I heard that the Ruins Emperor chose this place for the Imperial Mausoleum to preserve the corpses of the royal families deceased with the extremely cold aura. Is that true? Tian Shu, the great bandit, had a sharp mouth, a goatee and shifty eyes. He looked nervous and alert as he scanned his surroundings and took a sip of strong liquor. He did not belong to the 7 bandits, but he had reached the half-step semi-god realm. He was a descendant of a divine rat. Like Yinglong, he liked to dig up graves and rob tombs. Back when he helped Jiang Tian steal the pearl tree, he had led his clansmen to participate and contributed greatly. Revive my ass. Those old freaks that condensed their blood and stopped their lifespan, including the Ruins Emperor, are all corpses and bones in the Ruins Emperor's palace. Yinglong was disdainful. He sprawled behind a boulder and scanned the mountains in front of him. This is a land of rising dragons. Legend has it that the ancestors are buried here, allowing their descendants to receive blessings and have excellent luck. I never expected the ruins emperor to be a fan of feng shui and metaphysics. Who knows, his ancestors might have been grave robbers too. Up ahead one could vaguely see mountain ranges that resembled coiled dragons. The mountain ridges rose and fell, extending majestically. It was majestic and had a myriad of phenomena. It stood opposite the sun, moon, and stars as though it was breathing. Legend had it that in ancient times, when this place was still near the solar system, there was a waterfall that was 100,000 feet tall. It was like a celestial river that cascaded down endlessly like a divine miracle. The ancient sages of the ancient immortal ground had once built a dojo there. After experiencing the Wandering Era, the Breaking Era, and the Tao Damage Era, the world changed and the world changed. Now this place was completely dry. There was not a single blade of grass and it was covered in snow. It was used as a mausoleum by the royal family of the ruins of immortality. What if there are huge dumplings? Tianshu had his fair share of grave robbers, but there were not many royal mausoleums. At that moment he was a little nervous and kept drinking. Tianshu was as timid as a mouse, but once he was drunk he was incredible. He was invincible in all sorts of ways and was boundlessly wild and domineering. Divine donkey hooves. Just stuff them in your mouth. Yinglong chuckled. His figure flickered and disappeared from where he was, leaving behind a huge hole. They continued forward, going 5,000 miles deep before reappearing. Finally they arrived at the core area. 100 miles ahead there were forts and camps. Many cultivators were stationed there, and there was even a soul formation cultivator overseeing them. Other than that, there were also mighty Chilan beasts, white bears and spirit cranes. They occupied various places with vigilant and ferocious gazes. They were tamed tomb guardian beasts. Huge tombs were like mountain peaks of various sizes. They stood tall in the snow with a majestic aura. Around them were magnificent biao, divine pillars, merit monuments, projection walls, ancestral worship altars. There were all sorts of buildings. They were exquisitely designed and emitted precious light. Auspicious colors shot out in all directions. They had an extraordinary bearing and were solemn. The various achievements of the royal family of the ruins of immortality were engraved on them. They were magnificent and beautiful for the future generations to remember and pay homage to. Tianshu's eyes were filled with greed. He smiled and said, "Children, get ready. I can already smell the aura of Mingqi. This time, we must loot the imperial mausoleum of the ruins of immortality clean." Chapter 1579. Squeak, squeak, squeak. We're rich. We're rich. Many great demons with divine rat bloodlines were excited and rubbed their palms together. A few of them had already started digging. Long Xingnan followed suit. There was a hint of excitement in her eyes. It was her first time doing something like that. It was a brand new experience. Don't panic. Let me calculate the path of the thieves' cave. The one I left last time was blocked by them. Yinglong cursed as he scanned with his divine perception and used the earth vein art to find loopholes. He said with a sinister smile, "Search the place and steal all the bones." This used to be the territory of the ancient heavenly courts, but they took it over. Yes. Children, don't show any mercy. We're here to wreak havoc. After we take all the good stuff, we'll blow this place up. Tianshu was very angry and said emotionally, "Back then we were all stealing spirit grains in the ancient heavenly courts. Xing Emperor and Ao Emperor didn't hold it against us. We owe them a great debt of gratitude. We have to avenge them." To a certain extent, Tianshu was a true thief. He wasn't a divine general but a natural-born thief. He had traversed tens of thousands of years, stealing from the past to the present. No matter which dynasty or generation, he would steal until the end. Soon, Yinglong chose a new place to dig the thieves' cave and used the heaven-deceiving array that Jiang Tian had taught him to hide his aura. They were very well prepared. Each of them had a few supreme-grade crystals engraved with runes that allowed them to merge with the aura around them. They could avoid being scanned by the divine perception and ensure that nothing went wrong. Alright, there shouldn't be a problem. Even if we really alarm the tomb guards or run into a big dumpling, we can still escape immediately. Moments later, Ying Long finished setting up the heaven-deceiving array and smiled smugly. The tomb robbing was to interfere with the ruins' emperor's palace and support Jiang Tian in attacking the Aquamoon Grotto heaven. Stealing the treasures was just a casual task and there had to be no casualties. Every squad had a gate of heaven influence. No matter when or where, they could guarantee that they would be able to escape immediately as soon as they were discovered and killed. It was better to be safe than sorry. After all, they were grave diggers, not bandits. Everyone get ready to enter the mountain. Get the explosive array disc ready. If a big one jumps out, we'll blow it up. Tianshu told everyone to be careful. After all, this was the imperial mausoleum of the ruins' emperor's lineage. It concerned the providence of the ruins' emperor, so they placed great importance on it. It was not an exaggeration to call it a tiger's den. Soon after, they drilled into the ground and disappeared from their original position. Even the entrance of the cave was sealed with mountain rocks and snowy peaks. There were formations and seals here, but they were all experts in this field, so it wasn't difficult for them to break through them. Using formations to break through formations, they soon entered a tomb. This was an underground palace. It was richly ornamented and dazzling. There were treasures everywhere. Many of the decorations were carved out of top-grade crystals. Open all of your storage pouches and search. Tianshu ordered, his eyes glowing. Your mother. This was the underground palace of the ruins' emperor's imperial uncle. His name was Vast Origin Godly King and he was very old. I heard that he was a divine transformation realm cultivator back then. He once killed thousands of people and was invincible. In the end, he died in a battle with the ancestors of the deity ground. Ying Long glanced at the carvings on the wall. They were some of the deeds of the mausoleum owner. Tiskei singing praises and flattering. What do you mean by shocking the ancients and dazzling the contemporaries, unparalleled achievements and eternal glory? My ass. Aren't you still in my hands now? I'll do whatever I want to you. The more he looked, the angrier he got. He blasted open the coffin with a palm strike and dragged out a huge skeleton. He then peed in the tomb. Soon after, they found a chessboard in a side room. It caused a huge uproar. Everyone cheered excitedly and rushed in. The chessboard was rough and gave off an ancient aura. The lines on it were crisscrossed and covered in moss. At first glance, there was nothing special about it. However, upon closer inspection, the chessboard was like an ancient battlefield. It was murderous and contained shocking killing intent. It was as if an ancient battlefield had reappeared in the world with thousands of soldiers and horses. From the perspective of archaeology, this chessboard is not simple. Ying Long walked in, his eyes shining as he made a judgment. Legend had it that Vast Origin Godly King liked to play chess. He used it to comprehend the art of war and was skilled in sand table deduction. This was most likely something he left behind. Everyone was shocked. If that was the case, the chessboard was too precious. It might even contain the fruit of the Godly King's Tao, making it a supreme-grade Tao artifact. Tianshu tried and placed his divine sense on the chessboard. Sure enough, he felt boundless killing intent. It was as if he was in an ancient battlefield and had experienced one battle after another. It's indeed very precious. Vast Origin Godly King turned the true ancient killing intent into a mark and engraved it on the chessboard. It's worth comprehending even for soul formation experts. He commented. The material of this treasure is also very mysterious and priceless. It might be useful for His Majesty the primordial celestial emperor to form his nascent soul. Ying Long put it away carefully. It didn't take long for them to loot this underground palace. They left and went to the next one. They looted along the way and gained a lot. When they reached the 5th underground palace, they were all petrified. That's incomparably dense spiritual chi rushed over from a treasure tree. All kinds of laws were fluctuating and the great Tao turned into threads. It was soul-stirring as if they were facing an ancient chaotic aura. Even Long Xingnan, Tianshu and Ying Long, who had seen the world, were very excited at this moment. Their mouths and tongues were dry. Gulp. They could clearly hear them gulping crazily. They were shocked by the treasure in front of them. It was a treasure tree about 30 feet tall, rooted in a divine spring. Its branches and leaves were crystal clear, and there were thousands of strands of auspicious aura. The spiritual chi was so dense that it could not be dispersed, as if it was carved out of celestial jade. The spiritual qi wasn't the most important thing. What was most eye-catching and shocking was the threads that seemed to contain traces of the great Tao. They were dazzling and colorful. The treasure tree was filled with chaotic aura. It was as if it didn't belong to this world at all. Instead, it was rooted in the celestial world and extended to the human world, passing through both worlds. It was like a dream. Ying Long had seen many treasures and was very knowledgeable. He realized that the tree was a natural treasure that was very close to being a divine material. If refined, it could allow one to reach the limit. Damn, this is the palace of the Ruins Emperor's concubine. The Ruins Emperor is quite sentimental. Only he would be so generous. Ying Long was so excited that his body trembled. Squeak. We're rich. We're rich. Tian Shu and his brother's descendants were squeaking strangely. They were inexplicably excited and wanted to plunder. An amazing immortal opportunity. This is a towering Tao tree that contains many threads of the great Tao. It can definitely help the Taichu heavenly arch reach the mid-stage nascent soul realm. Long Xingnan's eyes were burning. Dig up the pool too. Ying Long ordered. Those people naturally wouldn't be polite. They were there to rob tombs and plunder, so they immediately dug up the divine fist pool and took it away. An hour later they had ransacked the imperial tombs and taken away many corpses. They were so clever that the cultivators guarding the tombs didn't notice. Explode. When they all came out of the tunnel 100 miles away, Ying Long immediately activated the exploding array disk. Rumble. The area within 100 miles trembled. Many tombs as big as mountains flickered as if they were being suppressed. But they finally couldn't resist and were torn apart. Rubble flew into the air as the tombs collapsed. All kinds of buildings were ground to dust. Huge cracks appeared on the ground like the Great Rift Valley of East Africa. The underground palace has been robbed and the imperial tombs have been destroyed. We need the help of the Ruins Emperor's palace to hunt them down. The cultivators guarding the tombs were shocked and reported to their superiors. Chapter 1580. In the ruins of ruins, the city walls were tall and steep. Countless divine arrays locked the sky and Dharma power waves were powerful. A supreme divine emperor was out on patrol. It was Divine Emperor Lai Hua. His strength and achievements were no less than Divine Emperor Hanxi's. He was his grandfather, a peerless divine emperor who had once dominated the ancient times and intimidated the entire ruins of immortality. His body was as majestic as a mountain and he stood proudly on the bronze chariot. His black hair was thick and his brows were sharp like swords. His gaze was like divine lightning that could pierce through the void. He wore a scarlet armor that was engraved with flame patterns, and he carried a flaming heavenly blade on his back. He had a heavenly bearing, an invincible bearing, and an aura that could swallow mountains and rivers. Thousands of soldiers followed behind him. Their armors clanged and their swords shone. They were silent and solemn. Their fighting spirit was earth-shattering. Wherever Divine Emperor Lai Hua went, there was dead silence. The majesty of the soul formation stage, the bearing of the royal family, the control of life and death, the obedience of the heart, made everyone keep quiet out of fear. Jiang Tian had destroyed the 3 troops, killed the divine emperor and swept across the worlds. This was a chaotic situation that had never been seen before in the ruins of immortality. Normal princes couldn't deal with it. After Jiang Tian killed Tong Yujian, the task of tracking down Jiang Tian and eliminating the resistance forces like the bandit family was taken care of by Divine Emperor Lai Hua. The 7 bandits are nothing. They're just remnants of the previous dynasty. Kong Teichu is just an ant. In front of the invincible Divine Emperor Lai Hua, he's nothing but a chicken and a dog. He can't withstand a single blow. As soon as he said that, the entire ruins of immortality was shocked. His words were arrogant and domineering. He didn't take Jiang Tian, who had killed a soul formation overlord, seriously at all. Although Divine Emperor Lai Hua despised him strategically, he valued him tactically. He carried out the strategy of you fight yours and I'll kill mine. He sent troops everywhere and destroyed several secret bases of the 7 bandits, killing more than a dozen nascent soul cultivators. Everyone knew that the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality was going to have an ultimate showdown with Jiang Taichu and the 7 great bandits. Otherwise, his subordinates wouldn't have said such bold words. Divine Emperor, this is bad. A grand cultivator came on his sword looking panicked. Why are you panicking? What happened? Divine Emperor Lai Hua asked calmly. He had the demeanor of a general. The 7 great bandits excavated the imperial mausoleum and then blew it up. Many rare treasures flowed out, being auctioned off in the great auction houses of the ruins of immortality. After the great cultivator said this, the Inferno godly emperor raised his eyebrows in anger and flames spewed out of his eyes. He was furious to the extreme and his murderous intent rolled out for 10 miles. Beside him, one of the 9 guards of the ruins emperor's palace bellowed angrily, "Insolence! You are spreading lies to deceive the masses. The imperial mausoleum is heavily guarded. How is that possible? How would this subordinate dare to speak carelessly about such an important matter? I saw with my own eyes a cultivator who had drunk quite a bit of alcohol dancing on the city walls while hugging the skeleton of the ruins emperor's divine consort. The great cultivator kneeling on the ground was trembling with fear, but he still said as such. What? The Inferno godly emperor's expression suddenly changed. His long hair fluttered without wind as a terrifying scorching aura was released. Countless laws of fire boiled. There's more. The kneeling cultivator trembled uncontrollably, unable to find the words to say. There's more? What else? One of the guards bellowed angrily. Your father's mausoleum has also been raided. A pair of golden underwear has been publicly auctioned. The Inferno godly emperor spewed out a mouthful of blood when he heard that. He nearly fell to the ground. It was a great provocation, a direct insult to him. Not only had the imperial mausoleum been raided, but it had also been blown up. Many of the treasures had been publicly auctioned off at various auction houses. Immediately, it caused a huge uproar in the ruins of immortality. Golden underwear. It's worth 500,000 kilograms of crystals. It has Tao patterns personally inscribed by the ruins emperor. It's impenetrable and is the ultimate defensive divine artifact. It was worn by the Inferno godly emperor's father. Many flying sword messages swept across the ruins of immortality. It was Ying Long and Tian Shu announcing to the entire ruins of immortality that they were holding an auction in a small city in the wilderness. Many cultivators had the urge to vomit blood when they saw it. This was too despicable and shameless. It was practically trampling on the Inferno godly emperor's face. Investigate thoroughly for this emperor. I want to wipe out the culprit's entire family. The veins on the Inferno godly emperor's forehead throbbed as he flew into a rage. He was a godly emperor with immense authority. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? He nearly shattered his teeth from clenching them. We have to recover all of the remains and funerary objects, especially the ancient chessboard and the towering tree. We must not lose them. The Inferno godly emperor spewed blood from his anger as his body trembled. If not, the ruins emperor will probably forcefully exit seclusion in anger. When that happens, we will be awaiting punishment. It was no exaggeration. How could the ruins emperor tolerate the fact that the tombs of his imperial uncle and his most beloved divine consort had been robbed? Your Majesty, the group has appeared in Xianxia ancient city. A guard captain reported after investigating the matter. Chase after them and kill them. Divine Emperor Lai Hua led his army into the teleportation platform and chased after Ying Long and the others. However, when they arrived in Xianxia ancient city, Ying Long, Tian Shu and company had already vanished without a trace. Your Majesty, they have appeared in Yue city. The Inferno godly emperor's black hair fluttered as his gaze turned cold. With a slash of his saber, a fiery beam spanned 50 kilometers, vaporizing a boundless lake outside the city. Everything within 50 kilometers turned scarlet as it was burned to a crisp. The Inferno godly emperor charged into 9 cities but ended up empty-handed. He failed to catch up to the enemy. They are clearly leading us in circles. They only appear in areas where we have fewer troops, a guard captain said angrily. These places were originally meant for the disciples of the academy to be stationed. Today is the day they are mobilizing their troops. The Inferno godly emperor was exasperated as he said angrily, "Teacher is too slow. They are not even here yet." At that moment, a guard captain's expression changed drastically. The hand that held the jade transmission token trembled slightly. Your Majesty, bad news. one of the 7 great bandits, Tu Fei, launched an explosion at the academy. 1,000 disciples died. What? The Inferno godly emperor's expression changed drastically in disbelief. He took out a golden surveillance ball and a light screen unfolded. The square of the academy was ablaze. Corpses were strewn everywhere and blood flowed like a river. Countless disciples of the academy were severely injured. They limped and ran like a group of rats. They could not even fly on their swords. No one knew how many exploding array discs were placed inside the academy. From time to time they would explode, shattering mountains, turning buildings into dust. It was extremely horrifying. I heard that Jade Lotus Fairy of the academy is proficient in arrays. I Tu Fei am here to learn from you. There are 10-timed exploding array discs hidden in the academy. Once they are triggered, they will explode immediately. Take your time to find them and dismantle them. Tu Fei led a group of ferocious people and stood in the void, confronting the Chancellor of the Academy. The Chancellor and disciples of the Academy were so angry that they gritted their teeth. However, they did not linger in the battle. After a few strange laughs, they stepped into the gate of heaven influence and fled thousands of miles away. Tu Fei's exploding array discs are extremely complicated and not easy to crack. I'm afraid the Chancellor and disciples of the Academy are all tied up this time. A guard captain's eyes twitched as he said in exasperation. Suddenly, another great cultivator walked over and bowed. Report. Celestial River Star Lord's great-great-granddaughter, Diao Wu and Princess Lotus Fragrance were playing near Green Bamboo River in Donglin County when they were kidnapped. The perpetrator is suspected to be Great Bandit Fu Heishui. Celestial River Star Lord requests the Ruins Emperor's Palace to investigate. Report. The Marquis of Great Yen has been assassinated. The murderer left a blood letter at the scene. The perpetrator is Yun Zhongzi. He also threatened to enter the Ruins Emperor's Palace to assassinate him. Report. Ruins Emperor's Palace's Hengshan Palace in the south has been razed to the ground by an old bull monster. He threatened to turn all the royal palaces into fertile fields. Report. Imperial College has been attacked and turned into a swamp country. Many princes and princesses have been injured. The perpetrator is Green Flood Dragon King. News after news flowed in like flowing water in front of blazing flame god emperor, causing his expression to turn uglier. The 7 great bandits did not make a move, but once they did, they struck like a thunderbolt. Flowers bloomed everywhere, turning the entire Ruins of Immortality into a battlefield with smoke rising everywhere. The entire Ruins of Immortality was in turmoil. Small-scale kidnappings, explosions, and assassinations were constantly happening, stirring up huge waves that seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Countless cultivators were in danger as they boiled over, turning into a pot of porridge. Kong Teichu and the 7 great bandits are truly a bunch of indecisive bandits. They are extremely despicable and shameless. If you have the guts, fight me. The corners of blazing flame god emperor's eyes twitched. He was so angry that his liver was trembling. He gritted his teeth so hard that they nearly shattered. He felt somewhat helpless. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.